Chapter 201. Invitation from the Council. After arriving at the hospital together, George and Misaka Mikoto saw a large number of Misaka sisters lying on the hospital beds and being examined. The bodies of the Misaka sisters were all taken medicine to grow quickly in 14 days, so there must be a lot of problems. If you want to live like a normal person, you must be examined. Because it was too late, Misaka Mikoto had missed the closing time of the girls' dormitory. She was afraid that she would be abused by the terrible dormitory supervisor if she went back now, so she simply lay on the hospital bed for a night and waited for the examination results. And George naturally stayed in the hospital. However, he did not receive a physical examination from the hospital like other Misaka sisters. Because no matter what defects this body originally had, there would basically be no problems with the fusion of his physique from different worlds. But if the hospital obtained his current bloodline genes, it might really be a big deal. Apart from other things, the wizard blood in his body alone could drive the scientists of the Academy City completely crazy. The next morning, the hospital's chief doctor, the underworld soul chaser, found Misaka Mikoto and George. The results of the examination are not very good. Because of the use of drugs to accelerate growth, the lifespan of these children has also been rapidly shortened. According to the current situation, they can only live for 2 or 3 years at most. What, only 2 or 3 years? Misaka Mikoto was stunned on the spot after hearing this. How could she accept that so many sisters she had saved with great difficulty could only live for 2 or 3 years? Normally, it is indeed the case. However, as long as regular adjustments and treatments are carried out to slow down the speed of cell division and return hormones to normal, it is still possible to return to a normal human lifespan. The doctor's words made Misaka Mikoto feel relieved, but then her heart was lifted again. However, there are too many people. With the situation in Academy City, there is no way to adjust and treat so many children. This also requires a large amount of funds. Yes, there are more than 10,000 Misaka sisters, and they still need regular testing and treatment. Fortunately, the board of directors knew about this and was very angry about the school research institute conducting such experiments privately. The board of directors is willing to pay for the treatment of these children, and will send them to research institutes in various countries to help with regular examinations and treatment. I say. Can you finish your words at once? Misaka Mikoto raised her eyebrows angrily. She and the Soul Chaser are old acquaintances, and many things before were handled by the Soul Chaser. It is impossible that the board of directors did not know about this experiment. Because when she saw the mass production of ability users before, it was written on it that the strongest supercomputer tree graph designer in Academy City was used, and it was calculated that the mass production of Misaka sisters was less than 1% of the original version, so it was abandoned. And the strongest supercomputer tree graph designer in Academy City cannot be used without the permission of the top management of the board of directors. So this experiment was originally an experiment allowed by the board of directors, otherwise there were so many battles between Accelerator and Misaka sisters in Academy City, and the board of directors of Academy City could not have been unaware of it. But now these are not important. Since the top leaders of the council are willing to make up for it, it is naturally a good thing. She is not afraid that the top leaders of the council will disobey and send them abroad to continue to conduct experiments. She will often visit the Misaka sisters who stay in the Academy City. With the Misaka network, she can always know the situation of each Misaka sister. Sure enough, they are still valuable. George was not surprised by this result. As long as the Misaka sisters are valuable, the council will not ignore them. It was just that he was a little surprised that they were sent to foreign laboratories in different places. After all, if they were sent out, it might not be so easy to get them back. Misaka sisters will also meet new friends in foreign laboratories. Once they get used to the local life, it is normal for them to choose not to come back here. Unless the top leaders of the council have left something to control the Misaka sisters. But these don't matter to him. As long as the top leaders of the council don't find him, he naturally doesn't bother to care. His first priority now is to follow Misaka Mikoto's body, find a way to upgrade the 4th level ability to the 5th level, and then find out if there is magic in this world to see if he can learn valuable magic. I'll come to see you when I have time. The matter of Misaka sisters was temporarily resolved, and Misaka Mikoto shook hands with George and said goodbye temporarily. If she didn't return for a night, Her friends would be very worried about her, especially Shirai Kuriko, who shared the same dormitory. For her, George was also one of the Misaka sisters, but he was stronger and more mature. At least he wouldn't complain about her childishness like Misaka number 9982. After Misaka Mikoto left, the underworld soul chaser looked at George and asked, "Are you sure you don't need a physical examination? Logically, even if your ability can reach level 4, your body will also be stimulated by drugs, and you can't live more than 3 years at most." "No, I can solve this problem myself." George rejected the underworld soul chaser's invitation for a checkup again, and then walked out of the hospital alone. Now that he has a legitimate identity in Academy City, he can move freely in Academy City next. Originally, he was considering whether to go to Tokiwada Middle School where Misaka Mikoto was, so that he could learn the knowledge of developing abilities and further master abilities through contact with Misaka Mikoto. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was too inefficient. With his brain, the progress of normal students in class was too slow. It would be better to get some relevant materials to study by himself. If he couldn't understand it, he could find a professional to tutor him. Anyway, there were many scientists in Academy City. As for contacting Misaka Mikoto often came to the hospital to see Misaka's sister, and it was easy to find her in Chintaipan, so there were plenty of opportunities to contact her more. "Sir, if you have anything to say, just say it. If you keep hiding and following me, be careful that I will deal with you." Not long after he walked out of the hospital, George stopped and turned to look behind him. With his psychic ability, the other party's tracking skills were useless no matter how superb they were. Sure enough, a moment later, a yellow-haired young man in a white coat with half of his face covered with tattoos came out from behind a big tree on the roadside. "Your clone is really interesting, much more vigilant than the original. Are you from the council?" George raised his eyebrows and had guessed the other party's identity. "He is different from other Misaka sisters. The council will not let it go so easily. If the hard way doesn't work, they will definitely use the soft way. This is also within his expectations." Very smart, the leader of the Hound unit directly under the council, Kiara Suda, wants to invite you to join our unit. I wonder if you are willing. The yellow-haired young man showed a slightly crazy smile on his face. Chapter 202, Initial Mastery of Transformation. Tsitsila. George stamped his foot, and an electric current instantly hit Kiara Suda along the ground, causing his whole body to tremble. His yellow hair exploded instantly, and his legs softened. "What do you mean by this?" Kiara Suda quickly reached out to hold the tree next to him, and looked at George with an ugly face. George replied indifferently. "It's nothing, but your smile was too ugly, so I couldn't help it. I'd better smile less in the future, so as not to be beaten to death. Tell me, what benefits will you give me for inviting me to join?" "Hello, you have personality. We can help you quickly upgrade from level 4 to level 5. Is this a benefit?" Kiara Suda suppressed his anger and said after calming down. According to the combat performance of Clone 9981 and Atomic Disintegration, it is very likely that it has the potential to be a level 5. As long as it is well developed, it may not take half a year to successfully advance. In this way, Academy City will have another level 5, and a level 5 who is very good at fighting. So the chairman personally ordered him to find a way to control Clone 9981 no matter what. As a member of the crazy Kiara clan, he was very interested in such a powerful clone produced by mutation, so he was naturally willing to take on this task. As a scientist, he always believed that science is power. No matter how powerful a person with special abilities has weaknesses, the most important thing is to take the time to observe and analyze carefully. Even if it is Accelerator's defensive reflex, he can easily crack it if he prepares in advance. As long as Clone 9981 is willing to join them, he can find the opponent's weakness and control the opponent to become the most powerful blade of the hunting team. Not bad. George nodded slightly when he heard this. Originally, he planned to deal with the man in front of him casually and send him away, but now he thinks that maybe he can really give it a try. If in the entire Academy City, who knows the most about the person with special abilities and knows how to develop potential as quickly as possible and fully develop the ability to the limit? It must be the Council. After all, the entire Academy City was built by them, and the entire ability level was also established by them. If the council is willing to help him upgrade from level 4 to level 5, it will definitely be faster than him learning and exploring on his own. He can also take the opportunity to get inside and see what the council is, and by the way, use the information of the council to understand the world more clearly. As for whether he will fall into the tiger's mouth, he still has this confidence. So far, the other party only thinks that he is a level 4 clone with strong practical ability, and knows nothing about his magical ability. Besides this, if you have other requirements, you can also mention them. Seeing that George seemed to be a little moved, Kiarasuda immediately added fuel to the fire. George was not polite. First, the salary and various benefits must not be less. Second, I can go to your place if I want to, and I don't have to go if I don't want to, according to my schedule. Third, I will accept your mission according to the situation. If it touches my moral bottom line, then I will not do it. You have a lot of requirements. No problem, I can agree. Kiarasuda's mouth twitched, but he still nodded in agreement. Now the main thing is to let the clone number 9981 join the team. After joining, there will be plenty of time to slowly think of ways to prepare. Then go to our Hound Force headquarters base to have a look. I will help you develop a plan to advance to the 5th level ability user as quickly as possible based on your situation. Pressing the button in his hand, a black car soon stopped on the side of the road. George did not hesitate and followed Kiarasuda into the car. When George joined the hunting team as Misaka number 9981, a big thing happened in the fairy tale world on the other side. Transform. In the fairy tale wizard guild hall, George was standing at the bar and performing transformation magic. A blue magic circle lit up above his head, and in the blink of an eye, his golden cat body turned into the appearance of George, a human in the main world that he imagined, under the effect of transformation magic. It seems that I'm still a little short of the heat. George stood at the bar, looking at himself in the mirror that he had prepared in advance, and couldn't help shaking his head. He had already mastered some transformations before, but there were still some problems with the overall transformation. In the mirror, he did turn into a human, but it was a pity that he only turned into a human, but his body shape did not change. It was still a little bigger than a palm, not the normal body shape of a real human. So the casting of the transformation magic just now had some minor flaws. It's already very good. You have been able to achieve this level not long after you started learning. As long as you practice more in the future, you will soon be able to fully master the elementary transformation magic. Myra Jane on the side encouraged while wiping the wine glass. I understand. By the way, is the president not here today? George nodded and returned to the normal form of a magic cat. Before he mastered advanced transformation magic, he could only use a small part of his strength when performing transformation magic, so he normally moved in the form of a cat. Transformation magic is a kind of magic that is easy to learn but difficult to master in the magic system of this world. It is easy to get started, but it is very difficult to truly master it. It is said that if you practice transformation magic to the highest level, you can transform into almost anything, including plants, animals, insects, etc., which can be easily transformed. It can be called the magic version of the 72 transformations. Of course, no matter what you transform into, you can only get its shape. You will not have the power of a demon just because you become a demon. That is the effect of receiving magic. The president went to a large magic device manufacturing company to discuss the transformation of the mobile castle. Myra Jane replied. After defeating the ruler of the Phantom, Makarov accepted the loot mobile castle at George's suggestion. But because the guild has limited funds and cannot afford the high cost of transformation, it has been placed in the lake next to the guild as a decoration. Fortunately, since Fairy Tail defeated the Phantom, its reputation in the Kingdom Guild has risen again, and more people have come to the guild to issue tasks. In addition, George can now phantom teleport and help repair the cost losses caused by the destruction of public property, and the funds of the guild have gradually become abundant. Now it is finally enough to pay the down payment for the transformation of the mobile castle. So Makarov personally sent the mobile castle to the large magic device modification company today. Why didn't I see Natsu and the others? They don't seem to have taken any missions recently. George turned his head and looked at the guild, and found that Natsu and Grey, who were usually the most noisy, were not in the guild today. Normally at this time, the guild hall would have been mostly broken and waiting for him to repair it. Chapter 203. Our System and Magical Spirit Power. They seem to have gone to the Arcane Resort Paradise for fun. Rocky gave them some accommodation tickets for the Arcane Resort Paradise Luxury Hotel. By the way, you have been buried in the library these days, and you don't know that Rocky is a celestial spirit, right? Myra Jane smiled and told George what happened in the past few days. It turns out that Rocky's real name is Leo. He is not a human, but a Leo celestial spirit, the head of the zodiac. Because he was dissatisfied with the previous celestial spirit mage Colin's abuse of celestial spirits, he forced himself to stay in the human world, making Colin unable to summon other celestial spirits to fight and die in the mission. This also led to his punishment by the celestial spirit king and unable to return to the celestial spirit world. After that, he stayed in the human world disguised as a human possession wizard and joined the Fairy Tale Guild. Celestial spirits cannot stay in the human world for a long time, and need to return to the celestial spirit world from time to time to replenish the magic power of the celestial spirit world, otherwise they will die due to the exhaustion of magic power. Rocky is powerful, but he has been exhausted until now. After learning about Rocky's situation, the celestial mage Lucy summoned the celestial king and asked the celestial king to lift Rocky's punishment and make Rocky her celestial. Rocky is actually a celestial. George was also surprised after hearing this. He had never noticed it before. I missed a good show and I don't know what the Celestial King looks like. He felt a little regretful for not seeing the Celestial King, the ruler of the celestial world. He had seen the introduction of the Celestial King in the magic book related to the Celestials in the library. It is said that the ruler of the celestial world is very powerful. But Lucy actually summoned the Celestial King. This is something that few celestial mage can do in the entire human history. Myra Jane. Myra Jane. Just as George was thinking about matters related to the Celestial King, the magic crystal ball on the bar suddenly lit up, and a skinny old man appeared on the crystal ball. Senator Yahima. Myra Jane put down the cup, picked up the crystal ball, and showed a look of surprise on her face. Counselor Yahima was once a wizard of fairy tale and a good friend of President Makarov. He helped the council to solve many problems related to fairies. There was a hijacking incident at Arcane Resort last night. According to eyewitness testimony, the kidnapped person was Urza Shikalato, and the destination was a small island near the coast of Kalum. The leader of this hijacking incident was a black wizard named Jalal. He led a group of black wizards to build the R system on the island, intending to use the R system to revive the ancestor of black wizards, Ziref. The army sent by the kingdom was completely wiped out. At the suggestion of Councillor Zakrane, the council was ready to use the magic spirit power to launch a devastating attack on the island. There was only 25 minutes left. Hurry up and let Makarov find a way to rescue Urza within 25 minutes. Yahima said with a serious face. If Urza is kidnapped to the island, then Natsu and others will definitely chase after her. If they don't leave the island within 25 minutes, they will all turn into ashes with the magic spirit power. In the vote on the magic spirit power, he was the only one who voted against it. The other members voted in favor because they were afraid that Ziref would be resurrected. What? Marajana's face suddenly changed when she heard it, and then she turned her head and said anxiously to George. George, go to Kalum quickly, find Urza and the others, and ask them to leave the island quickly. The president is not in fairy tale, and even if he is, it will be useless. The president can't get to Kalum within 25 minutes. Only George, who knows space magic, can do it. Myra Jane, don't worry, tell me what the R system and magic spirit power are. Because he helped the wizards of the guild to put out fires every day during this period, he has been to almost all cities in the kingdom, and the coastal city of Kalum is no exception. So as long as he uses a phantom, he can go there instantly. Now he had to figure out the specific situation first, so that he could deal with it at ease. Myra Jane did not waste time and explained it to George as quickly as possible. The R system is an evil black magic created by the ancestor of the black magician that can revive the dead. Once, a black magician cult built 7 R systems on an island near Kalum in order to revive Ziref. Later, the entire council went out and destroyed all 7 unfinished R systems. Before Urza came to the Fairy Tale Guild, she was one of the little slaves captured by the black magician cult to build the R system. As for the magic energy, also known as super time and space destruction magic, it is the ultimate weapon of the Magic Council to maintain the order of the magic world. It uses satellite magic arrays to accurately launch huge energy bombs that integrate 2.7 billion conceptual magic to any place in the world. Its power is enough to destroy an entire country if used properly, which is very terrible. It's like a nuclear bomb in modern society, probably more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb can't destroy a country with just one. George immediately knew what was going on. He turned his head to look at the guild and disappeared from the spot. He originally wanted to find a few more wizards in the guild to help, but found that the most powerful Urza and others were already there, and the others with slightly better strength were all on missions. The remaining wizards in the guild hall would not only be of no help, but would probably be a burden. So in the end he decided to go alone. The main purpose of this trip was not to defeat the powerful black magician group that kidnapped Urza, but to rescue Urza and others and stay away from the island to prevent them from being accidentally injured by the magic spirit power of the council. As long as he could find Urza and her friends, this mission would not be too difficult for him, and there would not be much danger. Both the apparition and the mirror world could help him easily lead people to avoid the attacks of the magic spirit power. As soon as George's figure appeared over the city of Kalum, he immediately spread his wings and flew rapidly towards the depths of the sea in the direction given by Counselor Yahima. Apparition can only be reached in places that have been visited, and places that have not been visited still have to rely on the wing magic to fly over honestly. Fortunately, at full speed, his speed was not slow. Not long after, a small island with a strange tower appeared in front of him. Looking at the broken ships with the kingdom flag floating near the island, he knew that he should have found the right place. Invisibility. Pulling out his wand and adding a layer of invisibility to himself, George activated the tracking spell and followed the footprints that appeared on the island, flying towards the gate of the tower. Being able to kidnap Urza, an S-class wizard, shows that the opponent is definitely not bad, so it's better to be careful. I have something going on at home recently, so the update is not good. I will update it as soon as I can deal with it in the next 2 days. Chapter 204. Eat my electromagnetic cannon. It's Natsu and Gray's magic. Arriving near the gate of the tower, George found that all the guards here had been knocked down. From the traces of magic on the guards, it could be determined that it was Natsu's dragon-slaying magic and Gray's ice magic. It looks like Natsu and Gray are here too, and I guess Lucy and Happy are also here. He was not very happy that Natsu and the others had caught up to the island before him, but instead had a headache. If it was just Urza, he could use the tracking spell to find her, and then just phantom her and leave. How powerful those black magicians were had nothing to do with him. The magical elf power would naturally teach them how to behave. But now, Natsu and the others are all in the tower, and they may not necessarily be together yet. It would be a waste of time for him to find them one by one and take them away. I can't help it. I'm the cat who wants to be the next president. I can't ignore the magicians of my guild. George shook his head and flew into the tower with one wing. But as soon as he entered the tower, he heard a man's voice echoing from all the places in the tower where sound spells were engraved. Welcome to the Tower of Paradise, I am Jalal, the ruler of this tower. The chess pieces from both sides have arrived, let's start the Paradise game now. Tower of Paradise? Paradise Games. George listened to the announcement that was like a magic broadcast, and secretly guessed what tricks this guy named Jalal wanted to play. The rules of the game are simple. I want to use Urza as a living sacrifice and perform a ritual to resurrect Zeref, the ancestor of the black magicians. In other words, as soon as the door to paradise opens, I win. And if you can stop this, you win. Having said this, the voice paused for a moment, then smiled and said. However, if it was just like this, it would be too boring. So here I will arrange 3 S-class magicians from the Skeleton Guild to hunt you down. Only by defeating them can you come to my side and stop me from resurrecting Zeref. By the way, let me remind you that the council is already preparing the ultimate destructive magic elf power that can destroy everything. So you need to hurry up. Otherwise, everyone will be reduced to ashes and disappear from this world under the power of the magical elves. That's not right. How does this guy know that the council has activated the magical elf power? After listening to Jalal's tower-wide broadcast, George frowned. He discovered Hwatian. He knew that the Senate was preparing magical elf power because of the notification from Representative Ajima. How did Jalal know about the decision of the Senate when he was in the tower? Could it be that this guy has some undercover spy in the Senate? If this is really the case, why do you still want to do this when you know that the council will activate the magical elf power? It is simply suicidal. The last and most critical point. After hiding for so many years, no one discovered that the R system was being built, and now it suddenly made such a big noise in the resort. It felt very deliberate, as if it was deliberately exposed. There must be some conspiracy involved, and it's not as simple as it seems. Find someone first. No matter what the other party's conspiracy is, rescue the person first. Following the traces left by the tracking spell, George flapped his wings and chased in Urza's direction. Find Urza first. If you are lucky, they stay together, then take them all away. If you are not lucky, send Urza out first, and then use the tracking spell to find the others one by one. Along the passage in the tower, after passing the corpses of the guards one by one, he suddenly stopped when he reached the 6th floor. Because he heard a familiar scream. Ah! 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 It's Lucy! Flying in the direction where the scream came from, he found Lucy, the first fairy tale member, in the central hall of the 6th floor. But Lucy was obviously not in a good condition at this time. Most of her top was torn, so she had no choice but to kneel on the ground and cover it with her hands to prevent it from being exposed. Behind her was Juvia, one of Zhang Jin's 4 ghost elements. At this time, Juvia was holding a water whip and whipping Lucy's butt like a psychotic attack. Behind Juvia, there was a mage dressed in punk style who was playing the magic guitar crazily. It's mind control magic. As a psychic, George is very sensitive to spiritual magic. He can clearly feel that the wizard playing the guitar is using the sound of the guitar to control Juvia to attack Lucy. It seems that this is one of the 3 S-class magicians that Jalal mentioned. He does have some abilities. George quietly took out a copper coin from his dressing room. Juvia, who is also an S-class mage, is actually being controlled as a puppet. The strength of the S-class mage in this Tower of Paradise far exceeds that of the average S-class, so he cannot be careless. So in order to save time, he chose to be invisible and act as a sneak attack. Eat my electromagnetic gun! The copper coin bounced up, and a voltage of 200 million volts surged. The cat's paw tapped lightly on the falling copper coin, and the copper coin immediately transformed into a supersonic electromagnetic gun and shot towards the guitar wizard's head. Since he is an enemy, there is no need to show mercy and he will go straight to the point. What? The guitar wizard, who was using sound magic to control Juvia, was immediately shocked when he felt the strong current suddenly appearing on the other side of the hall. However, the attack of the super electromagnetic cannon came too fast, and he had no time to control Juvia to use water magic to defend himself. He had to shake his hair and use his unique hair magic to form a defense to block in front of him. Boom! The supersonic electromagnetic cannon hit the hair full of magic power, and after a pause of less than a second, it pierced the hair and then hit the center of the guitar wizard's eyebrows. The guitar wizard flew up and hit the wall behind him hard, breaking most of the wall. The sound magic was interrupted, and Juvia, as an S-class wizard, broke free from control and returned to normal. Lucy, I'm sorry, I couldn't control my body just now, how are you? Juvia, who had returned to normal, hurried to Lucy and helped her up. At this time, the guitar wizard also stood up, covering his forehead, and his forehead was swollen. Despicable, hiding in the dark and attacking. If he hadn't blocked it with his hair just now, the blow would have exploded on the spot. My beautiful hair, damn it, I will kill you. The guitar wizard was furious when he found that his beautiful long hair was missing a section, as if it was bitten by a dog. He picked up the guitar and was about to use his ultimate move to control all the wizards in the hall with his voice. The wizard who just attacked was unknown where he was hiding, but as long as the opponent heard the sound of his guitar, he could not escape his control. Chapter 205, The Overlord's Hair Loss Curse. Unfortunately, before the guitar wizard's hand could pop out, a red light had already hit him from behind. Expelliarmus. It was George who immediately walked around behind the guitar wizard after firing the electromagnetic gun, and hit the disarming spell to knock away the magical device that activated the magic in his hand. So you're behind, go to hell. The guitar in his hand was forcibly knocked away, making the guitar wizard even more angry, but he also reacted quickly, using his unique hair magic to control the hair to elongate rapidly, rolling towards George like a waterfall. He knew that the sneak attack magician would be invisible, but the attack just now had exposed his position. Quick off! However, faced with the crazy attack of hair, George just raised his wand and easily chanted a hair loss spell. The hair loss curse, as the name suggests, is naturally a curse that makes hair fall off instantly. George also called it the Overlord hair loss curse. This curse is just like the dancing curse, the squeaky nest curse, the snot curse and other curses. They are all prank-like curses and will not cause any harm. But it is just right to use it here at this time. Sure enough, after being hit by the hair loss spell, the crazy hair paused in the air for a few seconds, and then all fell limply to the ground. As for the guitar wizard's head, his hair also changed from long and fluttering hair to smooth and shiny. My hair, how could there be such vicious magic in the world? The guitar wizard, who regards his hair as his life, felt his whole world collapse when he touched the top of his bare head. Before the guitar wizard could react from the blow of losing his hair, his body was enveloped by high-voltage electricity and he fainted. Collapsed to the ground. All turned to stone. After revealing his true identity and adding 2 spells to the guitar wizard, George put it in a box and threw it into the dressing room. The magic of using music to control others as puppets to help him fight was something he had never seen in Fairy Tale's library, and he was somewhat interested in it. George, it's so great that you're here. Seeing George appear, Lucy finally let out a huge sigh of relief. After the Ghost Dominator attack, all Fairy Tale wizards had a great sense of trust in George, and Lucy was no exception. Restored as new. He threw a repair spell at Lucy, restoring her clothes that had almost turned into strips of cloth due to the battle, and asked, "What's going on here, where are Urza and the others?" Urza was sealed in the card by his former partner, and now. Lucy covered her red buttocks that had been whipped with the water whip and told the whole story. A few days ago, they came to the resort with the hotel check-in ticket given by Rocky. Here they also met Juvia, one of the 4 elements of the former ghost. Originally everything was fine and everyone was having a great time. But last night, several magicians suddenly attacked them. Because the magic of the other party was very special, they were all hit without realizing it. Urza and Habi were also kidnapped. Later, they escaped and caught up with the magicians, came to the island, knocked down the guards and entered the tower. Then he met Urza who had escaped from trouble. Through Urza's mouth, they learned that Urza was once a slave who built the tower here. Later, she and Jalal led their friends to resist and defeat the black magician who enslaved them. But just as they were about to leave, Jalal's personality suddenly changed for some unknown reason, and he threatened the lives of all his friends to banish Urza, and also deceived his friends that Urza had betrayed them. Fool your friends to continue building towers and create a free paradise world. The magicians who attacked last night were Urza's friends when she was a slave. Urza was caught on purpose because she wanted to return to the island to find out Jalal's true purpose. And when those friends knew the truth, one of them, Shiu, in order to protect Urza from being hurt by Jalal, took advantage of Urza's unpreparedness and sealed Urza with his own playing card. Lusa must defeat Jalal alone. So the team dispersed. Quinn took Urza to the top floor to fight with Jalal. Gray and Simon, another childhood friend of Urza, chased after him to stop them. Lucy and Juvia came to find the one who rushed into the high building. Tower wants to save Natsu from Happy. It seems that things are very complicated. Let's go find Natsu first, then join Urza and the others and leave here. Originally, George wanted to apparate Lucy and Juvia out first, but considering that the whole thing was weird, there were still 2 S-class enemies in the Tower of Paradise and a Jalal of unknown strength. He thought it would be better to get together first and then go out together. After taking action to defeat the guitar wizard, he has been exposed to Jalal's sight. An extra helper can also help when encountering enemies. Juvia is also an S-class mage after all, and can help a lot in battle. Lucy herself is not very strong, but her star spirit is still somewhat useful. According to her own words, there is an Aquarius star spirit Akia, whose strength is no less than that of an ordinary S-class magician, but he has a bad temper and attacks the enemy without distinguishing between friends and foes. She does not dare to summon him unless it is a life or death situation. Footprints appear Natsu. Temporarily changing the target of the tracking spell to Natsu, George set off again with Lucy and Juvia. The Tower of Paradise is 100 meters high and has dozens of floors. It's so complicated inside that it would be really difficult to find someone if it weren't for the tracking spell. I lost, and the Fairy Tale's recovery wizard is here too. This is getting more and more interesting. At the top of the tower, Jalal, who was sitting on the throne, supported his chin with one hand and flicked the chess piece representing the guitar wizard off the board with the other hand. For him, the outcome of the battle below was not important. As a thought body that could become one of the 10 holy wizards of the kingdom by dividing half of its strength, he thought he could easily defeat all the fairy tale wizards below. Even if a cat with the strength of an S-class wizard was added, the result would be the same. The reason why he didn't take action was that he felt that waiting was too boring, and he played a game to kill time before the magic spirit power came down to completely help him complete the R system. This is still too slow. It is estimated that the magic spirit power attack will take 15 minutes. George directly rushed out of the tower with Lucy in one hand and Juvia in the other, and flew up in a straight line. After confirming the floor where Natsu was, he used the explosion spell to open a hole in the tower and rushed in. What the hell? After they entered the tower, they saw a very strange creature. It was a creature with a strong human body and an owl's head. The key point was that the owl had short cherry red hair on its head, which looked 80% similar to Natsu's hair. What surprised George the most was that the final target of his tracking spell was that strange creature. Chapter 206. The Roar of the Fire Dragon. Ice Shape Assault Gun. At this time, the owl man sprayed out dragon-killing flames, and Grey used the ice shape. The two of them were fighting each other with fire and ice. Next to them were Simon and Happy, Urza's childhood friends who were injured. Simon, what on earth is going on? Didn't you go after Zio and Urza? And Happy, what about Natsu? Lucy looked at the owl man using dragon-slaying magic with a shocked face, her whole body was messed up. Only Natsu knows the fire dragon slayer magic, and that lock of hair looks very similar to Natsu, but what's going on with that owl's head? Lucy, Natsu was eaten by that owl. Happy cried loudly. Simon half knelt on the ground, holding his stomach and explaining. He is not Natsu, he is S-Mage Owl, one of the 3 feathered crows of the Skull and Bones Guild. He has the terrifying ability to obtain the enemy's magic by eating it into his stomach. In 10 more minutes, Fire Dragon Natsu will be completely digested by me, and I will gain the power of dragon-slaying magic. After the owl man suppressed Grey with flames, the arrogant GG laughed. George wanted to take action, but Juvia, who liked Grey over there, saw Grey being suppressed by the flames and rushed forward screaming. Master Grey, let me help you, cut through the water flow. Several sharp water knives slashed at Owl Man, who quickly dodged to avoid them. Juvia is an S-class mage. The water sword can easily cut through rocks. If she is hit, her body will be cut into several pieces instantly. Good job, Juvia. Seeing that Owl Man had a flaw in dodging the water jet, Grey quickly set up a cannon. Ice-style, ice cannon. An avalanche-like force erupted from the cannon, hitting Owl Man and smashing several walls. He fell to the ground in a daze, and Natsu in his stomach was vomited out. According to the outside magic guild, Grey also has the strength of an S-class magician. 2 S-class magicians are still combined with ice and water, so their lethality is naturally extraordinary. Ice Shape can also be included in the list of people who want to learn magic. George looked at the power of the ice and snow cannon and nodded secretly. On the Marvel side, he has just made a new wand using the heart nerves of the World Tree and the Frost Giant King. In addition to the normal 25 times magic bonus, there is an additional improvement for frost magic. If he could learn this ice and snow cannon and later use it with a wand, the power would probably be no different from a real avalanche. The magic elf power will be launched in 10 minutes. Lucy, you and this Simon will take Urza's other friends out of the tower first and wait for us on the sea outside the island. Happy, grab Natsu and follow me to find Urza. Seeing that Naz was just a little dizzy and nothing serious, George quickly made arrangements. Simon was injured by the owl and couldn't help him much. It would be better to let him find his companions and leave first. Lucy's Aquarius star spirit can only exert its greatest power at sea, so he can go to sea first and stand by. He took Natsu, Grey and Juvia who had S-class strength to find Urza. With so many S-class people together, even if they did encounter trouble, they could be solved quickly. Okay, you have to be careful. Lucy helped the injured Simon and walked towards the tower. Happy grabbed Natsu, George grabbed Grey and Juvia, and flew outside the tower again, flying upward in a straight line. Following the guidance of the tracking spell, they arrived at a tower level near the top. It should be right here. George curled his wand with his tail and pointed forward. Thunderbolt explosion. A hole was opened in the sturdy tower again. It must be said that this explosive spell is definitely an expert at demolishing buildings. You must know that this tower, which took 8 years to build, is not an ordinary building. It incorporates a large amount of magic materials and has a large number of spell inscriptions engraved on it. The exterior walls are extremely strong. Normal magic won't be able to break through the defense. That is to say, the explosion spell has additional special effects on the building and the increase of the wand can directly explode a big hole. Wow! As soon as they entered the blasted hole, George, Natsu, and Gray couldn't help but let out an exclamation. This floor of the Tower of Paradise is very empty, a huge space with a bridge in the space. Only by crossing that bridge can you reach the entrance to the top floor. Guarding on this bridge is a Karaga, the strongest costume mage among the 3 feathered crows. This is a woman wearing a cherry blossom kimono and holding a red magic sword. What the 3 of them said wow was not this space and the woman a Karaga, but Urza who was opposite a Karaga. When they rushed in, they happened to see Urza wearing purgatory armor being slashed by a Karaga, and the sudden appearance was really amazing. But it only lasted a moment, because after the armor was hacked, Urza changed into new clothes. Only this time it was no longer armor, but only a chest wrap and 2 long swords. Urza, do you want help? George led everyone behind Urza and was able to smash the magic armor of the top S-class wizard Urza. The strength of the wizard opposite should not be underestimated. George, you're here too. Urza nodded towards George. No, let me do it myself. Facing such a master, I shouldn't defend myself. Only by letting go of my heart and attacking with all my strength can I win. Let's decide the outcome with one blow. With a flash of her body, Urza gathered all her magic power on 2 long swords and rushed towards Banjiu. Banjiu also drew her sword to meet Urza. The 2 sides seemed to be staggered in the air for a moment, but in fact they had fought for hundreds of moves. You really have a way, the Queen of Fairies. Urza. After landing, Banjiu muttered, the magic knife in her hand shattered, and the whole person fell to the ground without a sound. In the fight just now, she was hit by Urza who only attacked but did not defend. Urza, there are still 8 minutes before the magic spirit power is launched, it's time to leave. Seeing Urza defeated Banjiu, George stepped forward and said. Urza shook her head again. George, take them away first. I have to make peace with Jalal today. I want to find out why he did this. Don't worry, as long as I stop him within 8 minutes, all his plans will fail. She never understood why Jalal, who was so kind and reliable, suddenly changed his personality and became like this. Okay. Looking at Urza's firm eyes, George knew that Urza would not leave with him no matter what he said. She probably had already made up her mind to die with Jalal. He reached out to stop Natsu and others from objecting. The moment Urza turned around, he launched a magic spell at Urza. Fainted. Chapter 207. Magic Crystal that improves meditation efficiency. Urza is not Natsu and Gajeel. She does not have the magical immunity of a dragon slayer. She was hit by George's coma spell without any preparation and fainted on the spot. Juvia, take Urza with you. Let's leave here. There are only 5 minutes left before the magic spirit power is launched. It is obviously not a wise decision to let Urza fight with Jalal. It is also unwise to take everyone to fight with Jalal. Jalal can command an S level as strong as Banjiu. His strength is extremely strong. He may even be a saint-level wizard. And along the way, the other party is obviously brewing a big conspiracy. Without knowing anything and with the threat of magic spirit power, it would be too stupid to continue to follow the other party's script. First leave the Paradise Tower, leave the attack range of the magic spirit power, and then wait for subsequent developments. If Jalal and the Paradise Tower are blasted into air by the magic spirit power, then everyone will be happy. If not, then they will respond according to the situation. If they can win, they will fight. If they can't win, they will run. There are so many magic guilds in the kingdom, so many powerful magicians, and many holy 10. If there is something, the tall man will take care of it. There is no need to sacrifice his life in vain. He doesn't like to fight a battle that he is not sure of. If Jalal really needs Urza's body as a carrier for Ziref's resurrection, and leaves the Paradise Tower to chase them, then fighting outside is better than fighting in the Paradise Tower. At least the opponent has no home advantage, and they are no longer threatened by the magic elves. Taking out the box expanded by the traceless extension spell, putting Urza and others into the box, George directly apparat to the sea outside the island. At this time, Lucy and Simon, with Urza's other two childhood friends Wooly and Miliana, left the tower and came to the sea in a small boat. Repair as before. Using the repair spell on a kingdom ship that was smashed by magic on the sea, a brand new ship soon appeared on the sea. After releasing Urza and the others and picking up Lucy and the others, George removed Urza's coma spell, and everyone stood on the deck and looked at the Tower of Paradise. Urza, there is less than a minute before the magic spirit power is launched. Let's watch here. Jalal. Urza, who had woken up, knew that she would not be able to catch up even if she went there now, so she could only sigh silently. At the same time, Jalal, who was on the top floor of the Tower of Paradise, flicked all the chess pieces on the table, stood up and came to the window. Forget it, I will deal with you after the Tower of Paradise is completely completed. If the R system wants to be completely completed, it needs to invest a huge amount of magic power. Even as Saint 10, he can't do it. He can only rely on the ultimate weapon of the Council, the magic spirit power. So a few years ago, he divided half of his magic power to condense the thought body, and joined the Council under the pseudonym Zikaline. With the strength of Saint 10, he became one of the members of the Council. The thought body proposed to use the magic spirit power to prevent Zeref from resurrecting in the Council, just to let the Paradise Tower absorb the 2.7 billion conceptual magic power emitted by the magic spirit power. After that, he can use Urza, the S-class wizard's body, to resurrect Zeref. Originally, he was waiting for Urza to come to him, and then he would start to resurrect Zeref directly after the R system was completely completed. Now the plan has changed, but it doesn't have much impact. After the R system is completely completed, he will take back the thought body in the Council, restore his full strength, and personally capture Urza. What a terrifying magic power! Looking at the several layers of huge golden magic arrays that suddenly appeared above the Paradise Tower, George and everyone on the ship showed a look of horror on their faces. They have all heard of the Council's ultimate destructive magic spirit power, but it is the first time they have seen it with their own eyes. In front of the huge satellite magic in the sky, in front of the 2.7 billion conceptual magic powers gathered, everyone felt their own insignificance. Boom! A golden beam of light that seemed to be real burst out from the huge golden magic circle and hit the Paradise Tower directly. Instantly, the whole sky was covered with white light, and everyone couldn't help but close their eyes. How could this happen? However, after the white light that illuminated the whole world, the Paradise Tower did not disappear, but turned into a huge magic crystal 100 meters high. Sure enough, there is a problem. George looked at the magic crystal tower full of magic power, and his face was not too surprised. When he found that Jalal did not chase him, and Jalal did not leave the Paradise Tower when the magic spirit power was launched, he knew that the Council's plan might fail. Jalal must have a way to resolve the attack of the magic spirit power. Otherwise, he would not be so stupid as to wait for death in the Paradise Tower. So that's it, his Paradise Tower was not built at all, he needed the magic power of the magic spirit power to completely build the Paradise Tower. At this time, Urza also reacted. She was also a slave who built the Paradise Tower back then, and she knew about the Paradise Tower at all. Why did the Black Mage group build 8 towers at the same time 8 years ago? The purpose was to better collect magic power and then activate the R system. However, Jalal only built 1 tower, so how could he say that he had completed the R system? She had also reached a dead end before, and had not thought in this direction. She had always wanted to go to the top floor to find Jalal to end it all. Now that I see the magic crystal tower, I finally understand it completely. So now the R system is complete. After hearing Urza's explanation, everyone finally understood Jalal's real purpose. If such a large magic crystal is used for meditation, wouldn't the magic level rise rapidly? George looked at the huge magic power emitted by the magic crystal, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. The meditation technique he learned in the magic apprentice world is actually to absorb the power of the outside world through mental power and transform it into magic power and store it in the body, so as to improve his magician level. This is somewhat similar to the cultivation in mythology. Once the magic level exceeds 500 levels, you can basically live forever. The Ring of Merlin and the Ring of Morgana can condense the surrounding power to make the meditation faster. The higher the concentration of the surrounding power, the more efficient the meditation will naturally be. If he can meditate with the Ring of Morgana in this magic crystal tower, the efficiency of meditation may be increased tenfold. So at this time he had decided that no matter how strong Jalal was, he had to defeat him today and take the magic crystal tower for himself. Fortunately, his team was not weak either. In addition to himself, there was the top S-Class Urza, S-Class Natsu, Grey and Jovia, and Lucy who could summon S-Class Celestial Spirits to help fight in the sea. Chapter 208. True Celestial Magic. Urza, whom I once loved deeply, sacrifice your body for my ideals. At some point, Jalal had appeared above the ship. Urza also conjured up 2 magic swords and rushed up directly. Jalal, you damned guy, lie down. This magic power is stronger than Joseph, definitely at the Saint 10 level. George's brows frowned immediately. He guessed that Jalal would be very strong, but he didn't expect that he would be stronger than Joseph who he beat last time. The last time they beat Joseph, they had to fight all the wizards in the entire guild to win, and it was thanks to Natsu who ate the fiery fire and consumed a lot of the opponent's magic power. Let's go together. Urza was definitely not a match alone, so George spread his wings and rushed over, followed by Natsu, Grey and Jovia. Simon and others were injured and could not help, so Lucy took out the Aquarius Star Spirit Key. Just you. Zerf showed a trace of disdain on his face, and his body flashed and disappeared in the air. Meteor. It's not disappearing, it's just too fast. George saw Jalal wrapped in a layer of starlight with his extraordinary visual capture ability, and his whole speed was accelerated like a meteor. First, he dodged Urza's strongest sword skill to kill Kakagio, and then kicked Natsu and Grey down one by one. However, when attacking Jovia, her body was hydrated in time to avoid it. 7-star sword. 7 stars appeared behind Jalal and hit the hydrated Jovia with thunder. Jovia, who dodged the physical attack, was directly hit into the sea by this magic attack. Super Railgun. A coin with a huge electric current shot at Jalal's back. The moment he saw Jalal's action clearly, George also took action. This kind of attack can't hurt me. Jellard turned around and used his fist wrapped in starlight to break the electromagnetic cannon with one punch, and then turned into a stream of light and rushed towards George. The 4th level electromagnetic cannon is still too weak for a Saint level 10 wizard. If it was Misaka Mikato's triple supersonic electromagnetic cannon, Jalal would not dare to take it directly with his fist. Change. Jellard's speed was too fast, and other magics were difficult to hit except for the electromagnetic cannon, so George's body directly emerged from the magic circle, and he changed from a palm-sized golden kitten to a giant cat 10 meters long. Electric current stimulation. Not satisfied after growing bigger, the voltage of 200 million volts stimulated every cell in the body, which made his physical strength and speed rise to a higher level again. Get out of here. The cat's claws as big as a millstone slapped Jalal who was rushing over with electric light. After the collision of fists and claws, George was stronger after all, and he hit Jalal hard. Go. At the same time, he controlled the blades to strangle Jalal who was knocked away. Facing a Saint level 10 wizard, you can't hold back at all, you must go all out to have a chance of winning. Open it, the gate of Aquarius, Aqua. On the sea below, Lucy also inserted her golden star key into the sea. A blue magic circle rose, and the mermaid Aqua held the magic bottle and roared with blue veins. Stinky girl, you disturbed my date again, all of you go to hell. The terrible magic power burst that was not inferior to that of an ordinary S-level wizard, the water flow in the magic bottle carried a large amount of seawater to form a tsunami, and rolled towards the falling Jalal. Ah! It was just that the terrible tsunami not only swept Jalal, but also rolled into the big ship where Natsu, Grey, Jovia and Lucy fell into the water. It was really an indiscriminate large-scale attack. Giant armor. Spear of evil breaking. Urza, whose attack was avoided by Jalal, put on the most powerful giant armor and threw the spear that could break all evil forces at Jalal who was caught in the sea. Interesting, then I'll play with you. Faced with this multifaceted attack that would kill an ordinary S-class wizard, Jalal did not show any panic on his face. He crossed his hands and a black magic circle suddenly rose. Fall into the endless darkness, dark paradise. A black hole that seemed to be able to swallow everything appeared in an instant. Countless sharp blades, sea water and giant spears were all swallowed by the black hole, and then exploded. The powerful shock wave bounced George, Urza, Aqua, Lucy, and many others away. Ice-shaped big platform. The white magic circle lit up in the sea water, and a huge ice platform suddenly spread out on the sea surface, catching everyone who was shaken away. It was Grey who recovered and used freezing magic. So damn strong! George returned to his normal size and fell on the ice, unable to help but swear. So many S-class wizards attacked him, but he was defeated by the opponent with just one magic. He was even more terrifying than Joseph last time. I'll tell you a secret that will make you despair. The President Joseph, who was defeated by all your guild members, was not as good as one of my thoughts in the ranking of the Holy 10. Oh, I forgot to tell you that the reason why the council activated the magic spirit power was because I separated a thought and named it Zickeline. You should have heard of this name. Zickeline. George's pupils shrank when he heard this. Of course he knew this name, one of the famous 10 holy mages, the youngest of the 10, and one of the members of the council, but his photo has never been leaked. I didn't expect it to be just a thought of Jalal. Thought is a very advanced magic that can't be learned by non-top S-class mages. It is very difficult, but also very practical. It can separate a real clone, which can have half of its own strength at most, and can be recovered at any time regardless of distance. A thought with only half of its strength at most is already ranked above Joseph, so Jalal, who is now fully powerful, doesn't need to think about how terrible his strength is. Don't forget, people's strength will improve. While Jalal was in the rhythm of the villain dying for talking too much, George used telepathy to notify Natsu to come over and began to pour fiery fire into his mouth. After the battle with the ghosts, everyone's strength has grown, especially Natsu, because of the extreme feeding of fiery fire. It seems to have opened up some special power, and the body's ability to withstand fiery fire has been greatly enhanced. Oh, progress, then I'll let you know what the gap is. Standing on the floating celestial magic circle, Jalal laughed wildly, and the magic power in his body ran wild, making the surrounding air a little distorted. True celestial magic star collapse. A huge magic circle rose above his head, and a huge meteorite with endless flames fell from the sky and smashed down on everyone below. A meteorite fell from the sky, and one hit could easily turn a city into ashes. Chapter 209. The Thunder Giant Absorbing Thunderstorms. It's really celestial magic. George looked at the big meteorite falling from the sky, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Everyone come over here. Needless to say, they probably wouldn't be able to stop such a big meteorite if they combined their defense together. Since you can't block it, you can only avoid it. After hearing George's spiritual message, everyone, including Lucy and the others, gathered around George. Natsu, use Brilliant Flame quickly. The flame on the left hand and the flame on the right hand, the two flames merge into one, the brilliant flame of the fire dragon. Fusing his own flames with the absorbed fierce fire, the huge brilliant flames attacked the meteorite from bottom to top. Taking this opportunity, George stretched his hand toward the ice below. Mirror world. The hard ice surface immediately rippled, and everyone fell into a mirror world that was opposite to reality. What's going on? Looking at the meteorite smashing into pieces outside and continuing to hit them, after the extremely huge tsunami, it actually had no impact on them at all. Lucy and the others all showed blank expressions. This is my mirror magic. I can temporarily hide in another mirror world without being affected by the outside world. George opened his mouth to explain. Hugh over there said. It's space magic, very similar to my magic. Zio's magic is to set up a space in the playing card, and then collect the enemy into the space of the playing card. The poker space is very similar to this mirror space, except it is not as big as the mirror world. Gerald is proficient in all kinds of magic and is also very sensitive to space. He will find this place soon. Simon looked at the tsunami that had not calmed down outside. Leave here first, we are no match for Jalal. No, once Jalal resurrects Ziref, it will be a catastrophe for the entire world. Urza looked at George. George, you send them away first. I'll stay and look for opportunities to make a sneak attack to see if I can kill Jalal. I won't leave. I'm not leaving either. If Master Grey doesn't leave, I won't leave either. Natsu and Grey were obviously unwilling to risk Urza staying alone, so they decided to stay and continue fighting Jalal to the end. George thought for a while and rearranged the battle plan. The level of magic just now definitely consumed a lot of his magic power. I have a powerful spell that might defeat him, but it will take time to prepare. He didn't want to give up such a large piece of magic crystal. How long will it take? Urza asked. It will take at least 7 minutes. George did the math. His ultimate move is naturally that very time-consuming ancient magic move. With the blessing of this world's magic wand, the thunderstorm he can cast is much stronger than the one in Marvel's Asgard. Of course, this thunderstorm magic alone might not be enough to defeat Jalal, so he had a new idea. If it can succeed, then there is a high probability that it will be stable. If he failed, he would no longer be greedy for the magic crystal and just dissipate with everyone, his life at stake. Don't worry, we will definitely buy you enough time. Urza put on the bra again, holding 2 magic swords, and decided in her heart that even if she died, she would delay it until 7 minutes. Go to the island. There is a magic crystal there, which can make him throw a rat weapon. George led everyone to fly quickly towards the island in the mirror world. Fighting on that small island, at least Jalal couldn't release magic at the level of star collapse, otherwise the magic crystal would be destroyed as well. Outside, Jalal, who was standing on the celestial magic array, could not help but frown as he watched the magic aura of everyone disappearing after the tsunami calmed down. They shouldn't all be dead. His celestial magic is indeed very powerful. He can understand that ordinary fish are directly purified into air. But someone like Urza, who is S-level and has a highly defensive diamond armor, would at most be seriously injured and on the verge of death. As one of the members of the council, he had all the information about the guild war that took place at Fairy Tale some time ago. He also knew the strength of the people below and they couldn't be killed so easily. It seems you are hiding. Let me see where you are hiding. His eyes lit up with 2 magic circles, and Jalal began to examine the surrounding space. His magic enlightenment teacher was named Brian. He served as the director of the Magic Development Bureau in his early years and was proficient in all kinds of magic. And he is a genius who is born to learn magic. Basically, he can learn most magic in one go. So in addition to the powerful celestial magic, he also learned a lot of magic with various auxiliary functions. This kind of detection magic is one of them. I found it. It turns out that I entered another space to hide. In less than 2 minutes, Jalal had already found the spatial flaw in the magic of the mirror world. He raised his hand to use space magic, forcibly opened the space point connecting the mirror world, and plunged in. In the mirror world, he soon felt the aura of Urza and others, and flew towards the island. This guy really came in. On the island, feeling Jalal's breath squeeze into the mirror world, George led everyone back to the real world through the mirror of the magic crystal. Just now Simon said that Jalal was able to enter the mirror world, and he was not particularly surprised. Although they are magic from different worlds, the essence of magic is similar. Akaraga can use his sword to cut through space and attack Urza, who is locked in the card space. Urza can also cut through space to escape the seal of the card, which shows that in this world, space magic is not unbreakable. It is not surprising that Jalal, who is so powerful and proficient in many kinds of magic, can see through the mirror space and break in. Magic like the mirror space is best dealt with by reckless wizards like Natsu. It is easy to be cracked by wizards who like to study various magic. See where you can escape. Not long after George led everyone out of the mirror world, Jalal also returned to reality from the mirror world. Jalal, let me end you. Urza went up and started fighting with 2 magic swords. Natsu, Gray, Jovia, Lucy, Simon, Hugh, Wooly, and Miliana, who had recovered some strength, also joined the fight. George retreated silently and continued to recite the long spell of ancient magic. Jalal is still strong. Even if he doesn't use large-scale magic, he can easily suppress everyone. Fortunately, Urza, Natsu and others are also very strong and have been gritting their teeth to persevere. Thunderstorm is coming. Thunder Giant. Seeing that everyone was about to give up, George finally finished his spell. At the moment he finished the spell, he also activated his superpowers, condensed the iron sand and rocks on the island, and slowly turned into a tall thunder giant. Yes, he just wanted to try to see if the thunder giant could absorb the lightning of the thunderstorm magic and be further strengthened. I'll finish my family affairs today, and I'll start to update tomorrow. Chapter 210. Shattering the Darkness with Thunder. I want to create a free country. In pain and fear, Ziraf whispered to me that I am the chosen one, the one destined to create a free country with Zeref. You guys, why can't you understand that in the face of my great ideal, all sacrifices are worth it? Jalal frantically released his magic power, drawing magic circles one after another. The starlight was like a missile washing the ground, turning all the resistance of Urza and others into bubbles. Urza's magic sword broke, Natsu and Grey were covered in injuries, and even standing had become a problem. Lucy's aqua was also knocked back to the star spirit realm. Juvia was better off because she could rehydrate, while Simon and the others were all seriously injured and lying on the ground. Gerald, your so-called ideal will never be realized because we still have George. Looking at Jalal, whose face was distorted in the air, Urza gritted her teeth and stood up and yelled. At this moment, 7 minutes had passed, and she had already seen the dark clouds filled with lightning in the sky and the thunder giant gradually taking shape behind Jalal. Boom! As soon as Urza finished speaking, countless lightning bolts, under the control of George's wand, struck Jalal in the air. Jalal waved his hand to draw a magic circle, condensed the starlight into a shield in front of him to protect himself, and turned around in surprise to look at George, who was standing on the thunder giant. I thought Urza would be the hardest to deal with, but I didn't expect it to be you, the cat. The strength of Urza and the others was stronger than what was reported in the intelligence, but it was within his expectations. The only thing that exceeded his expectations was the cat named George. The first information I got was that he could use repair magic similar to the Arc of Time. Later, he seemed to have some more fire magic and attack magic, but his strength was at the level of an ordinary S level. So he didn't pay much attention to the other parties sneaking away from the battlefield just now. As long as Urza and her group are dealt with, a mere cat won't be able to make any big waves. But now it seems that this cat's strength is not just as simple as that of an ordinary S-level magician. The lightning that is constantly bombarding him is no less powerful than the magical power of an ordinary S-level lightning magician. The key is not a one-time attack, but continuous attacks. There's a lot more you didn't expect. Seeing that Jalal blocked the lightning strike, George controlled the 30-meter-tall thunder giant to raise his right hand. Go! The super-strong electric power envelopes the iron sand and rock soil, and an enlarged version of the electromagnetic gun bursts out. It seems to be stronger than the previous one, but it's still far from defeating me. Jalal maintained the starlight magic in his left hand to defend against the lightning bombardment, and deployed a golden magic circle in his right hand. Celestial magic 6 constellations of stars. 6 golden stars emerged from the magic circle and faced the enlarged version of the electromagnetic gun in the form of a barrage of cannons. After a loud explosion, the star and the electromagnetic gun disappeared at the same time. As expected, it still doesn't work, then let's do it. Seeing that the thunder giant's electromagnetic gun could not hurt Jalal, George knew that he could only use his last resort. The fusion of ancient thunderstorm magic and lightning superpowers, his newly created ultimate version of the electromagnetic gun. He closed his eyes and once again entered the state of ancient magic sensing the world. Then he waved his wand to pull all the lightning that originally hit Jalal in the air to the top of his head and injected it into the body of the thunder giant. With the injection of countless lightnings, the thunder giant's body began to expand rapidly. More and more sand, rocks, and iron sand were attracted by the lightning. Even the seawater outside the island was sucked in and injected into the thunder giant's body. In just a few seconds, the 30-meter-tall thunder giant that he gathered as a level 4 ability user surpassed the 100-meter-tall thunder giant that Misaka Mikoto had as a level 5 ability user. Finally, it did not stop until it expanded to 200 meters. Down. It seems this is the limit. 200 meters is the limit that he can control as a 4th-level ability user combined with magic. If he continues to inject lightning, he will no longer be able to control the huge electricity in the thunder giant's body. To break through, unless his superpower can be upgraded from level 4 to level 5. What kind of magic did this use? Jalal, who had been calm at this moment, was also frightened by the thunder giant that was twice the size of the magic crystal. He knew that Fairy Tail's president, Makarov, was proficient in giant magic. This cat had used the same giant magic to grow in size before, but there was no such type of giant among the giant magic he knew about. Is this the ultimate move that George was talking about? Lucy and the others reluctantly sat up and were a little dumbfounded when they looked at the 200-meter-tall thunder giant. Laxus can't even do this. Grey murmured. Who is the strongest lightning mage in the guild? Of course it was the chairman's grandson, the S-class mage Laxus, who was able to stun Natsu with one blow. But now, he feels that the strongest thunder mage in the guild should be awarded to George. George, beat him hard for us, let him know how powerful our fairy tale wizards are, and let him understand that the freedom gained by taking someone else's freedom is not true freedom. Natsu, who had amazing recovery ability, opened his mouth and sprayed a ball of fire into the air, shouting excitedly. Only a strong will to change the world can push history forward. Now that it has come to this point, then you all should die. Jalal's eyes were bloodshot, and his hands quickly drew a giant black magic circle in the air. Its purgatory shattered. Jalal, do you want to destroy the magic crystal tower as well? Urza was shocked when she saw the magic circle cast by Jalal. Purgatory Shatter is a forbidden magic that combines the four elements of wind, water, fire, and earth to condense dark energy. The most powerful magic in the mobile fortress where they captured the ghost ruler was not the magic crystal cannon, but the forbidden magic Purgatory Shatter, which was infused with power by four elementalists and guided by Joseph. It's just that Alia, who represented the wind at that time, was beheaded by George in advance, so he couldn't use it. Now, Jalal has used his own strength to cast this forbidden magic, which shows that his strength is indeed much better than Joseph's. Destroy it and destroy it. Next time in 5 years, I will be able to build a new one. Jalal poured all his power into the black magic circle. Facing the 200-meter-tall thunder giant, he also felt tremendous pressure after consuming a lot of magic power. At this time, even if the magic crystal would be affected, he didn't care so much. Forbidden Magic Purgatory Break. An unusually thick black energy erupted from the magic circle and headed straight for George. Crush the darkness with thunder, the ultimate electromagnetic gun. Facing Jalal's forbidden magic, George did not dare to be careless. He concentrated all the electricity in the thunder giant's body in his right hand and released the ultimate version of the electromagnetic gun. Chapter 211. The real murderer behind the scenes, Yuryushia. The thunder that illuminated the world and the darkness that swallowed everything collided with each other, and the powerful explosion spread all around in an instant, and the magic crystal tower was directly broken into several sections from the middle. The entire island gradually dissipated in the collision of darkness and thunder. Fortunately, George had already used telepathy to inform Urza and others of the strategy before the attack. Before the magic of both sides collided, Zio activated the poker magic in advance and put the injured people into the poker first. Then Juvia, who was in the best condition, sank directly into the sea with Zio to avoid the aftermath of the magic collision. Fortunately, I am strong enough, otherwise I really can't bear it. The thunder and darkness retreated, and George took the magic wand and cast healing magic on himself. If he hadn't used the giant magic to strengthen his body at the critical moment, he probably wouldn't just be injured. Little guy, I let you go crazy, but now you're not crazy anymore. Looking down, the island that was originally larger than the town has become only the size of a football field under the aftermath of the collision between the two sides. Jalal was lying on the island with his body burnt black, and he fainted from serious injuries. The forbidden magic purgatory shattering cast by Jalal was not much different from the ultimate electromagnetic cannon he cast, but he was much more fragile than Jalal, and with timely treatment, it was not a big deal. My magic crystals. Looking at the magic crystals that were shattered on the ground, with less than 1% of the original ones, George felt extremely painful. There was no way. In that situation just now, he had no time to split himself to protect the magic crystals, resulting in most of the magic crystals being destroyed due to the aftermath. It's better than nothing. After comforting himself, George put the remaining magic crystals into his box and put them into the dressing space. These magic crystals should be enough for him for 2 years, and he would think of other ways after they were used up. George! George! Just after George collected the magic crystals, Urza and others also emerged from the sea. When they saw George standing safely on the island that was only the size of a football field, and Jalal fainted on the ground with serious injuries, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Swimming to the island, Urza took out a new magic sword and pointed it at Jalal. Today, let me finish you off and complete my fate for the past 8 years. Originally, she came to this island with the intention of saving Jalal and returning him to the right path. After all, Jalal was so gentle and kind at first, and he was captured by those black magicians to protect them and became what he is now. But after hearing what Jalal said just now, she already knew that Jalal was hopeless, and only by ending Jalal completely could Jalal not cause more damage in the future. So even if she couldn't bear it anymore, she must not be soft-hearted. Wait, don't rush. George stopped Urza when he saw this. Through Urza's narration and Jalal's words, he always felt that there was something weird about this matter. According to Urza, Jalal was originally very gentle, kind, and had a sense of justice. It was after being captured by the Black Magician that his personality suddenly changed. He expelled her and began to inherit the wishes of those Black Magicians and devote himself to the great cause of resurrecting Zeref. And Jalal said that because he heard Zeref's whispers, telling him what true freedom is. According to the normal psychological development of people, this is completely impossible. The transformation of a person's personality and ideas must have a process, at least a few months, and even according to Urza's description, it is impossible for a strong person like Jalal to change without a few years. If there is a possibility, it is like the Soul Reaper curse he cast, using mental magic to affect a person's mind, which can change a person's personality so quickly. So he suspected that Jalal was likely to be cast with mental magic after being captured by the Black Magician, and it was a long-term control. Otherwise, with Jalal's strength, if he had not been affected all the time, he should be able to recover to normal on his own soon. Legislance. George pressed his cat's paw on Jalal's head, and telepathy and legilimency were activated at the same time. To activate the normal legilimency spell, the other party must be awake and look into the other party's eyes, and peek into the mind through the eyes, so as to read some fragments of the other party's memory. George didn't have to go through so much trouble. He directly used his psychic ability to invade the other party's brain, and then applied the enhanced effect of legilimency. It's true. As soon as he invaded Jalal's brain, he immediately found a hidden spiritual energy entrenched in Jalal's brain. Come down to me. The psychic ability burst out, forcibly pulling the spiritual energy down from Jalal's mind, allowing the spiritual energy to restore its original appearance in Jalal's sea of consciousness. It's you. After seeing the appearance of the spirit body, George's face suddenly showed a look of surprise. Because he knew this guy, or more accurately, he had met him once. It was Ultia, the head of the council when he went to Kriba City to repair the town before. I never thought that the plan would fail in the hands of a cat like you. Ultia looked at George, who appeared in Jalal's sea of consciousness like a giant beast, and knew that the spiritual power she left in Jalal's brain was far from being a match for George. So after the incident, she left a word and disappeared on her own. He is indeed controlled by someone. The person who controls him is a female wizard named Oloshia from the council. Taking his hand back, George told everyone about Jalal's situation. Everyone was shocked by this truth. The looks in Urza and Simon's eyes when they looked at Jalal changed from disappointment and hatred to pity. The gentle and kind-hearted Jalal had never disappeared in their hearts. Knowing that Jalal was controlled by others to do these things, they naturally no longer resented him. As for Natsu and Lucy, they are all kind-hearted people. If their companions don't die in this battle, they won't care too much. Healed as good as ever. Jalal's injury was serious. In order to prevent him from dying, George cast basic healing magic on him. After learning the truth, he had some thoughts in his mind. Since his goal is to become the guild leader of Fairy Tale in the future, it is necessary to strengthen the guild. The stronger the guild is, the more benefits he can get in this world in the future. If one day Fairy Tale becomes the most powerful guild in the world, he won't even need to leave the guild. The guild's magicians will perform missions around the world and bring him a lot of resources and magic he wants. Therefore, he felt that if Jalal could return to normal, it might be a good choice to bring him, Simon and others into the guild. Chapter 212. Immortality is achieved. Jalal's strength is definitely strong enough. If he hadn't relied on the fusion of the Thunder Giant and ancient magic, he would not be Jalal's opponent at all. And if Urza and the others hadn't delayed time, he wouldn't have been able to complete the final blow. So in terms of real strength, Jalal is much stronger than him. I'm afraid that even if President Makarov doesn't use the fairy law, he may not be able to beat Jalal. Makarov under normal strength is only a little stronger than Joseph, and Joseph's strength is not as good as Jalal's half-strength thought body. Even if Makarov uses the fairy law, it is still unclear whether he can beat Jalal. Because he actually doesn't know how powerful the fairy law is. Before, Makarov was interrupted by Arya's sneak attack halfway through the launch. Recruiting Jalal into Fairy Tail has 2 real Holy Tens sitting in. And Simon and others are also quite strong. Although they haven't reached the strength of S-class wizards, they are also considered top magicians below S-class. After a few more years of training, it is possible to advance to S-class. Of course, it refers to the S-class of ordinary wizard guilds. The strength requirements of the S-class of the Fairy Tail Guild are still very high. The most important point is that he is very interested in Jalal's celestial magic. The injury has stabilized, let's go back to the guild first. Taking out the box and putting everyone in it, George used a phantom to bring everyone back to the guild. At this time, Myra Jane, who was anxiously waiting in the guild, saw George appear and immediately asked nervously. "How is it, Urza, Natsu, Gray, Lucy and Happy?" "Don't worry, they are all fine, just a little injured and a little weak, just rest for a few days." George took out the box from the dressing space and released Urza and others inside. Myra Jane patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. "I just heard from Counselor Yahima that the magic spirit cannon has been fired and the council was destroyed. I was almost scared to death. Fortunately, you are all fine." "The council was destroyed?" George was stunned. Myra Jane explained. "It seems that a female magician named Ultia did it. Now the council has been temporarily disbanded and is preparing for reorganization. It's this Ultia again. This guy doesn't seem to be simple." George flicked his whiskers and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. "There is no doubt that this Ultia must also be a magician of the Dark Guild, but I don't know which Dark Guild she belongs to. The Dark Guild can still be so active under the siege of the council and a group of regular guilds. Its strength must not be underestimated. There must be many magicians who can be on par with the Holy Ten. Well, the council needs to be reorganized, so there is no time to deal with Jalal for the time being. Makarov can sort out the whole story of the Tower of Paradise and mobilize the relationship, so that Jalal can be exonerated at that time. If you count it, Jalal is also a victim in the whole incident. He is a puppet who has been controlled since childhood. The real culprit behind the scenes is Altair. But if you want the council to believe this information and be willing to let Jalal go, you still have to make some preparations in advance. The guild is now powerful, rich and influential, and it also helped the council to prevent Ziref from resurrecting. While the council is disbanded and reorganized, Makarov just needs to run around more. At worst, he can help repair the council. It shouldn't be a big problem." In the evening, Jalal woke up, and Jalal, who had regained his normal mind, almost collapsed because of what he had done in the past 8 years. Fortunately, Urza, Simon and others kept comforting him, and he finally calmed down. The next day, Makarov finally returned to Fairy Tail with the modified moving castle. After learning the whole story of the Tower of Paradise incident, he followed George's advice and took Jalal and the other 5 into Fairy Tail, and began to look for wizards who had left Fairy Tail to help deal with Jalal's affairs. Many wizards who left Fairy Tail now have a very extraordinary status. For example, Vlad Chinkan, one of the founders of the Fairy Tail Guild, is now the 4th-ranked wizard among the 10 holy wizards, and his status in the kingdom is extraordinary. There is also Senator Yahima, the president of the Four Hounds Guild and the Blue Pegasus Guild, which are second only to the Fairy Tail Guild, and they were all former Fairy Tail wizards. After a lot of trouble, the council finally believed in Jalal's innocence, pardoned Jalal's crime, and turned to the national wanted list for the female wizard Altair. At the same time, because the mobile castle was renovated, the Fairy Tail Guild also changed a lot. The original 2-story Fairy Tail Guild was demolished, and the mobile castle was grafted on top. A staircase leading to the original underground library was opened, and there were stairs leading down from all sides of the castle. The current Fairy Tail Guild has become the tallest, most eye-catching and most luxurious building in Magnolia City. It is equipped with magic crystal cannons and super magic arrays that can condense light magic attacks. Even the guild's male and female dormitories were moved from the city to the guild. After all, the guild castle is so big that there are many rooms for wizards to live in. However, rent still needs to be paid, but it is much cheaper than the original dormitory rent. Even Lucy, who pursues the quality of life the most, gave up the big house she rented and moved into the guild castle together. George was no exception, except that he made some changes to his room, using the Traceless extension spell to expand it a lot, so as to facilitate his magic experiments. Morgana's ring. After carving Morgana's ring on the floor of the room, George took out a magic crystal and placed it in his hand, and began to meditate to absorb the magic power in it. Because the panda clone meditated diligently every day, and with the magic crystal on his side adding more than 10 times the meditation effect, his magician level has reached 499 levels. One more level, he can break through to level 500. At level 500, his original body and all his clones will be immortal, and no longer worry about lifespan. So he didn't learn magic these days, but absorbed the magic crystal meditation to break through. No matter how powerful you are, if you can't live forever, it's all vain. Only with enough time can you explore the true meaning of magic and become a truly powerful existence. So breaking through level 500 is very important for him. Here it comes. As the magic crystal in his hand gradually disappeared, George felt the magic power in his body suddenly exploded and spread to every corner and every cell of his body. Under the nourishment of magic power, his cells seemed to have undergone some essential changes, and the whole person felt different in an instant. When all the magic power returned and gathered together again, George instinctively understood that his body would no longer be corroded by time. He broke through to level 500. Chapter 213, George, the most terrifying wizard in Nocturne Alley. In the world of Harry Potter, a few days before school started, George returned from Paris, France to his house in Nocturne Alley in London, England. Hermione went back half a month before him. Her father's dental office couldn't always be closed. Returning to London with George is Amy, who is going to serve as Deputy Director of the Department of International Magical Cooperation at the Ministry of Magic. Unfortunately, Amy is not good at silent and wandless spellcasting, so he still has to wait for the start of school to learn from Snape about his silent and wandless spellcasting. Amy's strength is good, and she is among the best among Aurors, but compared with several professors at Hogwarts, she is still far behind. Wizards like Snape, Flitwick and McGonagall are few and far between in the entire wizarding world, not to mention Dumbledore, who is currently the strongest wizard in the entire wizarding world. Voldemort had to step aside a lot. This is why he continues to go to Hogwarts with his current strength. There is indeed much to learn. Putting aside his magic in other worlds, his level of magic in this world's magic system is actually not that powerful. He just relied on multiple brains to accelerate the learning of a lot of magic, but in fact he was just like an ordinary outstanding wizard who had just graduated from 7th grade. He still didn't understand many magic principles thoroughly enough. At least he couldn't create some new magic like Snape. There are also many things such as the Red Loyalty Curse, the Hour Reversal Curse, various weather spells and powerful curses, door keys, magic cars, flu network, etc., which he needs to learn slowly. These have a great effect in every world. Of course, saying this does not mean that his strength is not good. In terms of pure combat power, in his current situation, with the magic of all worlds plus superpowers, he will not be afraid of Voldemort's resurrection. It's Dumbledore. It's hard to say who will win or lose in a fight. Sirius Black, this guy is quite powerful. On the last day before school started, George sighed after finishing breakfast and looking at today's Daily Prophet report on Sirius's escape from prison. Sirius had been escaping from prison for some time. In order to restore its reputation, the Ministry of Magic had transferred all the civil servants from the Ministry of Magic. However, no trace of Sirius was found. In fact, in the final analysis, the main reason is that the Ministry of Magic does not know that Sirius has animagus and can turn into animals to avoid being chased. Speaking of animagus, George had already found the steps for animagus transformation in the library, but he had never practiced it. On the one hand, it is too time-consuming. If it is slow, it will take several months, and at the fastest it will take a month to complete. On the other hand, he considered that turning into an ordinary animal now would have no effect on him. He was thinking about whether there would be a chance to turn into a magical creature in the future. Normally, animagus cannot transform into magical creatures, only ordinary animals. But he considered that if his clone in Fairy Tale later acquired the dragon crystal and had the physique of a dragon slayer, then he might have a chance to transform into a dragon when he underwent animagus transformation. And it's not just a retarded dragon from the Harry Potter world, it's a real magical dragon from the Fairy Tale world. George, are you home? While George was sitting in the yard drinking tea and reading the Daily Prophet, he suddenly heard two familiar voices coming from outside the shop. He stood up and came to the door. It was none other than Hermione, Ginny, Harry, Luo Feng, and the Weasley twins. "Why are you here?" He didn't expect Hermione and the others to come to Nocturne Alley to find him. Most serious wizards would not come here, and many young wizards were warned not to come to Nocturne Alley. "We're looking for you to go buy new textbooks for the start of the school year," Hermione and Ginny said at the same time. It turned out that early this morning, the Weasley family and the Granger family came to Diagon Alley. They planned to buy all the supplies for the start of school today, stay at the Leaky Cauldron in the evening, and go to the station early tomorrow to avoid rushing again. It just so happened that Harry was now living in the Leaky Cauldron because he inflated Aunt Maggie with the expansion charm. A few people got together and talked about George. When they heard that George lived in Nocturne Alley, they had some thoughts. The Weasley brothers have always had a great interest in Nocturne Alley. Hermione and Ginny have some special affection for George. Harry visited Nocturne Alley once last year, but he didn't see it clearly in the rush last time. Enz is curious in his heart. So they hit it off immediately, telling their parents they were going to Diagon Alley to buy supplies for school, but in fact they came to Nocturne Alley quietly. After hearing this, George could only say that he was indeed a Gryffindor. He was so brave. "Okay, let's go. I really didn't have time to buy a few of this year's textbooks." George closed the door and walked directly to Diagon Alley with everyone. He has already read the second grade textbooks, but there are some new textbooks this year that are different from last year, such as the Magical Creatures textbook, the Monster Book of Monsters. "George, I really admire you for being able to live here so safely." On the way back to Diagon Alley, Ron said to George with lingering fear. Not only are the various shops in Nocturne Alley very scary, but the wizards also look very abnormal. If they hadn't all taken out their wands just now and were ready to fight back at any time, they would all be worried that they would be captured and eaten by the dark wizard here. "Hey, why are they acting like this suddenly?" Ron had just finished speaking when he realized that the situation when he went out was completely different from when he just came in. When they just came in, even though they all took out their wands to threaten, those scary-looking wizards all looked like big bad wolves seeing little white rabbits, with greed in their eyes. But now, before they even took out their wands, they saw those wizards just glanced at them and quickly turned around and ran away, as if they were afraid of having anything to do with this place. The greed in their eyes turned into fear. Some shops along the street even closed their doors directly. "Oh, it's okay. Most of the wizards here are not normal. Maybe they have a brain seizure." George changed the subject lightly. Such a situation naturally had a lot to do with him. He did not do nothing in the past few days when he returned to Nocturne Alley. In order to prevent the situation of shops being robbed after he went to school, he personally went to the owners of each shop one by one and had a very friendly negotiation. He did not let go of the black wizards who often went in and out of this street. After being electrocuted several times, these dark wizards were now shaking just by looking at him. The weak little slave adopted by the old dark wizard had now become the most terrifying wizard in Nocturne Alley. Chapter 214. Why is he so good? People didn't doubt George's statement. In their eyes, dark wizards were just a group of brainstem defective guys, and it was understandable that they did anything crazy. Only Hermione looked at George thoughtfully, because she had witnessed George's magic power in Paris. "George, I heard that you received the Medal of Bravery from the French Ministry of Magic." Ginny asked with sparkling eyes on the way out of Nocturne Alley. Others also came over with interest. They had seen this report in the Daily Prophet, and Hermione had also said something before coming this morning. They really wanted to hear how George defeated the famous dark wizard wanted internationally. Luck, mainly the credit of the Aurors over there, I just helped a little bit." George waved his hand modestly. "I heard from Hermione that you solved several dark wizards by yourself and saved her." Obviously, everyone didn't believe that George only helped a little bit, and began to ask questions. George had no choice but to roughly describe the process of the battle, including when to use which spell, how to dodge during the battle, how to counterattack, etc. Harry and others were stunned. They were still at the stage of fighting magic duels, and they didn't have much practical experience. After walking and chatting, they soon left the dark Nocturne Alley and returned to the bustling Diagon Alley. "Let's go buy books first." Books are something that everyone has to buy, unlike cauldrons, which don't need to be replaced as long as they are not broken after buying them in the first grade. When they came to Flourish and Blot's, they were surprised to find that there were fewer bookshelves in the bookstore, but a large iron cage with more than 100 strange magic books in the cage. These books seemed to be alive and torn in the iron cage, which looked quite interesting. It's the textbook Monster Book of Monsters for the Care of Magical Creatures class. Ron took out the book list and looked at it and said, Care of Magical Creatures is a class only offered in the 3rd grade. George doesn't need to buy it this year because he is in the 2nd grade, but he has always been interested in magical creatures, so he plans to buy one to read from time to time. For him now, understanding magical creatures is no longer for making money, but more for understanding the magic that magical creatures are born with. The principles of magic are all the same. Many magical inventions in the wizarding world are inseparable from magical creatures, and many new magics are also created by studying the magic of magical creatures. Therefore, studying magical creatures more is also very beneficial for learning and innovating magic. For example, if he learns the magic of Zawu ignoring space blockade, he doesn't have to worry about being blocked by other space magicians in the future, resulting in the inability to apparition. What, you want 4 copies of Monster books? When the clerk heard what George and the others said, his face suddenly fell, and he felt like he was about to break. I will never buy these goods again, never again. It's such a mess. That time we bought 200 copies of the Invisibility Book of Invisibility, spent a lot of money, and then we couldn't even find a shadow. I thought it couldn't be worse than that. Next time, I won't buy these books. Muttering to himself, he put on thick gloves, then took a big stick that had been bitten with teeth marks, gritted his teeth and walked towards the big iron cage. Oh, damn it, I should use the Black Wizard's fiery fire curse to burn you guys. The poor clerk just put the stick into the cage, and before he could drive it away, he was bitten by a monster book and dragged away, and the glove on the other hand was also tightly bitten by several monster books, and he couldn't get rid of it even if he wanted to. I'll do it myself. Seeing this, George shook his head and walked to the iron cage. I don't know what these wizards who designed magic books are thinking. Aren't they afraid that these monster books will accidentally bite the little wizards? But after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was understandable. After all, young wizards are always very tough. Even if they lose arms and legs, they can be reattached. Being bitten by a monster book doesn't seem to be a big deal. Be careful, these books are very fierce. The clerk's gloves were completely bitten to pieces, and he sat on the ground. When he saw George reaching his hand into the cage, he hurriedly reminded him, but as soon as he finished speaking, a monster book was grabbed out by George like lightning, and then he quickly took the rope and tied it tightly. Then came the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The whole process was silky smooth, as if the monster books did not resist at all. The clerk and Harry were also a little stunned. In fact, it was normal. With George's current physical body, it was impossible for those monster books to bite him, and once he was caught, they could not resist the huge power in his hands at all. George, do me a favor. All your books are 20% off today. Seeing George and his friends leaving after buying books, the clerk grabbed George's arm, his eyes full of pity. He didn't want to be bitten by the monster book again. Although it was not a big deal, it really hurt. I still remember that when I was taking a book yesterday, my little brother was bitten by the monster book by mistake. He almost died on the spot because of the pain. We are old friends, of course it's no problem. George didn't refuse the clerk's request. It was a simple thing for him. Walking to the cage again, in order to increase efficiency, he did not reach into the cage to grab, but directly opened the cage and walked in. When he found someone entered the cage, all the monster books rushed up. At this time, George's hands drew after images, as if he instantly turned into a 1,000-handed Guanyin, took down the monster books one by one, tied them up with ropes, and piled them next to him. In just 30 seconds, more than 100 monster books were all conquered. Why is he always so good? Ron couldn't help but exclaimed. In his eyes, he could hardly see any shortcomings of George. No matter in which aspect, he was so outstanding. I wish I was so good. Harry's eyes showed a trace of envy. Although he was the boy who survived a disaster and the famous Harry Potter, he actually felt that he was average in other aspects except for his good Quidditch. Because he works very hard, if you spend your usual playtime on studying, you won't have to copy my summer homework. Hermione couldn't help rolling her eyes. The two guys just play every day, and the time they spend on studying is not even 1/10 of George's. When she was in Paris, she often went to see George, knowing that even in the summer vacation, in Paris, George never slacked off in studying. Almost 24 hours a day, except for sleeping, eating and going to the toilet, he basically studied and practiced magic. This made her admire from the bottom of her heart. People with talent are not scary, but people with talent who work much harder than you are the scariest. Because you can never catch up with him. Chapter 215. Alchemy Master Arthur. After leaving the bookstore with the thanks from the staff of Flourish and Blots, George and his friends continued to stroll in Diagon Alley. After buying some magic learning tools here and there, Hermione said she wanted to buy a pet. She had spent all her money on books in the past 2 years, and later found that everyone had their own pets, but she didn't. She was still very envious, so she wanted to buy one this year. The first choice is of course an owl, so that she doesn't have to go to the owl post office every time she writes a letter. It seems that some things are destined to happen. George muttered to himself when he saw Hermione holding a ginger cat with a face that looked like it was flattened on the wall. After buying the pet, it was already noon, and everyone went to the Leaky Cauldron for lunch. And here, he also met Arthur Weasley, Ron's father, an alchemist who likes to combine magic with Muggle technology items for the first time. At this time, Arthur Weasley was sitting at the bar reading the Daily Prophet. Sirius, who was skinny and had a hideous face, was roaring in the newspaper. "You are back, who is this?" Arthur put down the newspaper and asked George, who he did not know. Ginny rushed forward to introduce. "Dad, he is George, I told you before." "Oh, George, I know, the youngest national Quidditch player and the youngest recipient of the Valor Badge. Ginny always talks about you, saying that you are the best wizard in the first grade." Arthur Weasley looked at George with admiration in his eyes. It was the first time he met George, but he also knew that it was because of George's persuasion that Ginny had the courage to tell the truth about Voldemort's diary. "Hello, Mr. Weasley, I heard that you are a master of alchemy. I have also been learning alchemy by myself recently. I hope to ask you some questions if I have the chance." In terms of alchemy, Arthur is definitely a top figure, and the magic car he modified is proof of that. There are also various magic items invented and made by the Weasley brothers for mischief, which all use a lot of knowledge in alchemy, probably due to some guidance from their father Arthur. So he wanted to ask for advice on alchemy, and Arthur Weasley was definitely a good choice. "Master, no, I'm just interested in it. But if you like, we can discuss it. Recently, I was thinking that if I add a traceless stretch spell to the Muggle refrigerator, can I live in winter in the hot summer?" As soon as he talked about his interests, Arthur began to talk endlessly. And George felt that the opportunity was rare, so he threw out some of the problems he had encountered in his recent self-study of alchemy. Just like that, it was soon evening. If I had known this summer vacation, I should have spent some time visiting Ron's house. While eating at the Leaky Cauldron in the evening, George thought with some regret. Arthur's alchemy level is absolutely impeccable. In just half a day, he felt that he had made great progress in alchemy. Unlike the alchemy terms in books that are difficult to understand, Arthur can always use the simplest and most understandable words to let you understand some of the difficulties in alchemy. If Hogwarts offers alchemy classes, he thinks Arthur is absolutely qualified to be a professor. "It seems that it can only be next summer vacation, but I can communicate more with the Weasley brothers when I have time." The alchemy of the Weasley brothers is basically focused on making magic props for pranks, but in fact, if those things are used well, they are also good attack props. For example, the fat tongue and fat candy, after eating it, the tongue will become very big, unable to speak and very painful. Biting the door handle, when reaching out to grab the door handle will accidentally bite off your finger. Constipation candy, after eating it, you will be constipated and unable to go to the toilet. Canary biscuits, after eating, the body will turn into a canary, and it will return to its original state after 1 minute. There are many more. The next day, George carried his luggage and brought the owl Peppa to the Leaky Cauldron. The Ministry of Magic will send 2 magic cars to take the Weasley family to the station at the beginning of the school day, so George also took a ride with them. According to Arthur, because his magic car was gone, the Ministry sent a car to take care of him. In fact, George knew that it was because the Minister of Magic Fudge was afraid that Sirius would attack Harry, so he specially asked the Aurors to drive the magic car to escort him. Sirius's escape from Azkaban has put Fudge under great pressure. If the boy who survived was killed by Sirius in revenge, he would not have to continue to be the minister. In order to consolidate his position, he even offered a sky-high reward. Whoever can catch Sirius will be rewarded with 10,000 gold galleons by the Ministry of Magic. The Minister of Magic's salary is only 400 gold galleons a month. 10,000 gold galleons is definitely a huge sum of money for ordinary wizards. I can't wait to get on the train, at least I can get rid of Percy at Hogwarts. He just scolded me for dripping tea on his photo of Penelope Clearwater. You know, that's his girlfriend. She hid her face behind the frame because her nose was full of stains. Ron put on a collarless long-sleeved sweatshirt and complained to his good brother Harry while carrying his luggage. When he saw George standing below, he immediately raised his hand and said hello. Good morning, George. Good morning, Harry, Ron. George raised his hands. At this time, Ginny's angry voice came from above. Mom, I said, I have checked and I didn't forget anything, don't nag me anymore. But it seems that she heard the voices of her brother Ron and George greeting, and her attitude changed immediately. Okay, dear mother, I'll check again now. Harry, it seems that you are no longer my sister's most admired idol. Ron shrugged when he heard it. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. I don't think this is a bad thing. That first year Colin has already made him very troubled, and Ginny's shift in worship will only make him feel much more relaxed. It's okay, Crookshanks, I'll let you out as soon as I get on the train. Hermione carried a wicker basket and gently comforted the cat she bought yesterday, and pushed Ron away and walked down the stairs. Hey, George, you're always so punctual. No, you can't let that guy out, what about my poor Scabbers? Ron stood up and said dissatisfiedly. However, Hermione ignored him and pulled George out of the leaky cauldron. George, let's go to the door and wait for the car. Did you and Ron quarrel? George smiled knowingly. It is sometimes interesting to watch children quarreling. Chapter 216. The Death of Dementors. Humph, who told him to have a problem with my Crookshanks? Hermione said indignantly. He also called Crookshanks a little monster, but my Crookshanks is so pretty. Yeah, pretty. George looked at Crookshanks, who had a persimmon-shaped face, and nodded without comment. Anyway, he felt that normal people would not think Crookshanks was pretty, and perhaps a very small number of people would think it was ugly and cute. Everyone has their own aesthetics, just like bull terriers, Shar-Pei dogs, bully dogs, and Cornish Rex cats. Although they are ugly, many people like them. However, although Crookshanks is ugly, he is not an ordinary cat. He has catkin blood in his body and can distinguish malice. That's why he kept chasing after the mouse Scabbers that Pettigrew turned into. Hey, George, long time no see, is this your girlfriend? Two cars of the Ministry of Magic stopped at the door of the leaky cauldron, and Tonks, wearing a red jacket and jeans and with colorful hair, got out of the car. Seeing George and Hermione standing together and talking, he started to tease. Long time no see, Tonks, I heard that you have been successfully converted to a full-time position, congratulations. George didn't care and smiled and greeted. He didn't expect that Tonks would be among the Aurors protecting Harry to the train station this time. Hermione, what's wrong with your face? It's not hot today. At this time, Harry and Ron also came to the door, and saw Hermione, who was a little red, couldn't help asking. Hermione hurriedly carried her luggage and got on the car. I just wore more clothes this morning. Oh, the car has arrived, let's go quickly. The Weasleys came to the door and saw that the car of the Ministry of Magic had arrived, and immediately urged everyone to get on the car quickly. The journey was calm and there were no accidents when they arrived at the station. After crossing the 9 3/4 platform and boarding the Hogwarts Express, George carried his luggage to the carriage where the second grade was. Because they stayed at the Leaky Cauldron last night and there was a magic car to send them, they were also the first group of young wizards to arrive at the station, and there was no one else in the carriage. Ginny naturally sat in a room with George. Not long after they sat down, Colin and Luna also got on the car. Here. Here. Ginny waved to the two and explained to George. I wrote to Colin and Luna in advance, asking them to arrive early today, so that we can go to school together like last year. So that's how it is. George nodded, and he was surprised how it could be so coincidental. It turned out that all the coincidences were designed by someone in advance. But he didn't care. It didn't make any difference to him who he sat with to go to school. Before, he was more concerned about improving his reputation, so that he could have a better development after graduation in the future. But because his strength improved too quickly, he found that he didn't seem to care about those anymore. In the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks are not as efficient as pushing forward. The main reason is that he didn't expect that his strength would change so drastically in just 1 year. In fact, it is said to be 1 year, but if the time experienced by his original body and several other clones is counted, it is far more than 1 year. The Hogwarts Express traveled northward, and the scenery outside the window became more and more desolate. As the clouds in the sky thickened, the sky gradually darkened. At 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it began to rain, and the rolling mountains outside the window became blurred. The rain was getting heavier, and the window turned into a watery grey and gradually darkened. Finally, the lights in the aisle and on the luggage rack all lit up at once, the train clanged, the raindrops clattered, and the wind whistled outside the window. George was flipping through the detailed explanation of alchemy in his hand, and Ginny, Luna, and Colin had fallen asleep on the table. At this time, the train gradually slowed down, the sound of the wheels gradually disappeared, and the sound of wind and rain hit the window louder than before. "What's wrong, have we arrived?" Ginny opened her eyes dazedly, and Luna and Colin also woke up. George put away the magic book in his hand and replied, "No, maybe there was an accident on the train." He knew that this was a surprise inspection by the Ministry of Magic to prevent Sirius from entering the school through the Hogwarts Express. Accident? Colin and Ginny stood up and opened the door of the carriage to look out. The little wizards in other compartments also looked out curiously. No one knew what happened. At this time, the train stopped completely with a click, and all the lights went out for no reason. "Ah!" Screams suddenly rang out, and George felt 2 figures jumped into his arms. It was Colin and Ginny who were frightened. Flashing! Luna calmly used her wand to cast a lighting spell to illuminate the room. George carried Colin and Ginny, put them on the seats and comforted them. "It's okay, it's just a small accident, it should be fine soon." "What happened?" Colin pointed at the window of the train with a trembling voice. For some reason, frost was slowly forming there. It couldn't be so cold in early July. Ginny threw herself into George's arms again when she saw this. George patted her back helplessly to comfort her. He felt that Ginny was usually very brave, but he didn't expect that she was so afraid of the dark. She was still too young. This was not as good as Luna. Luna gave him the feeling that she was really calm and not afraid at all. It can only be said that she was worthy of being a little girl who could see the Thestrals. Just as George was comforting Ginny, a tall figure with a shawl suddenly appeared at the door of the room. He stretched out a greyish-white hand that seemed to be covered with mucus and spots, like a withered hand that had been rotting in the water for a long time after death, and slowly pushed the door open. Then he reached into a strange, cold, and corrupt head, as if looking for something. "Ah!" Colin and Ginny screamed when they saw this. Luna showed a rare look of fear and squeezed to George's side. "This is a Dementor, the most terrible dark creature, which is said to be able to suck away people's souls." "Ah!" Hearing Luna's explanation, Colin and Ginny were even more scared. At this time, George slowly stretched out one of his hands and lit up a small magic circle. Rain of light. Dementors are dark creatures that can only be driven away by the Patronus charm in this world. He wanted to try whether his light magic of the Holy Light system had a targeted effect. It didn't matter if it didn't work, he knew the Patronus charm anyway. And logically, they were not hairy, with Voldemort's soul fragments, and would not be attacked by Dementors. The light arrow condensed by the Holy Light shot directly at the Dementors. After sensing the light arrow, the Dementor's body trembled instantly and screamed in fear. But before it could dodge, it was hit by all the light arrows and turned into a pool of ashes. Chapter 217. I really didn't mean it. "Ah, this is dead." George looked at the Dementor that turned into ashes, blinked his eyes, and showed a somewhat surprised look. He just wanted to test whether Fairy Tale's light magic had any effect on the Dementors, and if it did, could it be driven away like the Patronus charm, or could it cause some damage? "But I didn't expect it to be so restrained, and it fell instantly with one blow." "How are you going to explain to the Aurors right now?" George scratched his head, feeling a little dizzy. You must know that although these Dementors are dark creatures, they are still Azkaban guards under the Ministry of Magic. And he didn't attack them actively like he attacked Harry. He was also performing official duties on the train. It seemed a bit unreasonable that he just killed them like this. But after thinking about it, it's not entirely unreasonable. Because he suddenly remembered that the Ministry of Magic did not notify Hogwarts of this raid, nor the students on the train. So according to common sense, when he saw a Dementor appearing at the door and sticking its head in, it would be normal for him to subconsciously fight back. The key point is who can say clearly that the Dementors did not attack them. After all, the Dementors attacked Harry in the third-year carriage. This is an undeniable fact. As if they heard the screams of the Dementors here, the Dementors searching in other carriages left the carriages and rushed over. Dementors are intelligent dark creatures that can communicate with wizards and are willing to cooperate with the Ministry of Magic to become the guards of Azkaban and obtain stable food. He even negotiated cooperation with Voldemort later and helped Voldemort attack Hogwarts. So when you find your companion screaming in terror before dying, you will naturally not ignore him. And when they entered the second-grade carriage and saw the Dementor ashes at the door of George's room, their round mouths suddenly let out an angry roar, and they were about to come up and suck George and the others to death. I advise you not to be impulsive. Seeing this, George had no choice but to use light magic again. Field of light. The dazzling light spread out in all directions with George as the center. The Dementors felt the threat of the holy light to their lives and fled in fear. And this scene also fell in the eyes of other little wizards in the second-grade carriage. There was such a big movement on George's side, how could the little wizards in the same carriage not be curious and poke their heads in to check? On the other side, the Aurors who were controlling the driver at the locomotive were also alarmed by the unusual situation in the second carriage. Rufus Scrimgeour, director of the Auror office, ordered to several Aurors. Go and see what's going on. Several Aurors immediately approached and appeared at the entrance to the second carriage. The minister is really wise. This Sirius is indeed hidden on the Hogwarts Express. Next to Scrimgeour, a fat middle-aged witch with a pink hairpin, a pink bow, a pink frilly skirt, and a pink umbrella saw her eyes gleaming when she saw the commotion in the second carriage. Scrimgeour said with an ugly face. Deputy Minister Umbridge, looking at the Dementors, they probably didn't capture Sirius. I think it is inappropriate for the minister to let Dementors search the Hogwarts Express despite Principal Dumbledore's objections. He disapproved of this operation from the beginning, but the minister and deputy minister ignored his opinion at all and stubbornly believed that Sirius would be hiding in the Hogwarts Express, and forcibly ordered him to lead a team to search. Umbridge's face changed slightly and she spoke in a mean voice. Scrimgeour, please pay attention to your identity. You are the director of the Auror office of the Ministry of Magic, not a teacher at Hogwarts. You only need to obey the orders of the minister and me. In the British wizarding world, the most powerful person is the minister, not the headmaster of a school. You have to figure it out. Dumbledore is the greatest wizard of this century. His wisdom leads the wizarding world. I hope that the minister and deputy minister will listen to his opinions more sometimes. Scrimgeour replied forcefully. Umbridge was so angry at Skiet that her stomach ached, but she didn't know how to refute, so she could only give up with a cold snort. At this time, a young Auror who went to investigate also approached back. It's not that Sirius was found. Yes. What is it? Hurry up and tell me why you are stammering. When Umbridge heard that it was not Sirius, she became even more angry. Seeing that the young Auror was still stammering, she wanted to expel him from the Ministry of Magic on the spot. It was a second-year wizard who killed one Dementor and scared away the other Dementors. The young Auror quickly explained the results of his investigation. Scrimgeour and Umbridge widened their eyes at the same time. Say again, a second-year wizard killed a Dementor. Are you sure your brain is not broken? The Dementors that even half the adult wizards were afraid of, the Dementors that even the Patronus charm could only drive away, were actually killed. Still being killed by a second-grade wizard, this is simply a fantasy and impossible. The two seriously suspected that the young Auror had been deceived. Many young wizards have seen it, and it has been confirmed by the recovered Dementors. The young Auror himself didn't believe it, but the result of the investigation was like this, and he was not the only Auror who was investigating, other Aurors also had this investigation result. Take us to see it. Scrimgeour and Umbridge still didn't believe it, and followed the young Auror to the second-year carriage quickly. They saw the remains of the Dementors on the ground and George, who was being recorded by the orator. "Hello, Mr. Scrimgeour." George was the first to reach out and say hello when he saw Scrimgeour. After looking at George for a while, Scrimgeour seemed to remember something and pointed at George and said, You are the little Dora." Although George's face had changed a lot in a year, he still recognized him. After all, Tonks often mentioned George to him, and he also heard about George's selection for the international Quidditch team and receiving the French Medal of Courage. "I should call you George now. What's going on? Did you kill the Dementors?" "Mr. Scrimgeour, I really didn't mean it." George quickly repeated the story he had made up. What he meant was that he didn't know that the Dementors were searching for Sirius, and thought that the Dementors were going to attack them, so he subconsciously used the magic he created to fight back. "I didn't expect the Dementors to be so vulnerable that he killed them." "Impossible, how can you create magic at such a young age, especially magic that can kill Dementors? Are you in league with Sirius? He just hid in your carriage, killed the Dementors, and then jumped out of the car and escaped." Umbridge pushed Scrimgeour away and questioned George. Chapter 218. Time Magic and Converter. "Madam, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. I don't know Sirius, and I don't have any relatives with him, so why should I help him? If you ask Mr. Scrimgeour about my life experience, you won't make such a stupid guess." George looked up and down at the fat middle-aged witch in pink, and roughly guessed her identity. He said in a very impolite tone, "Besides, what's the difficulty in inventing new magic? I invented flying magic in my first year, and now I have invented magic that can kill Dementors. What's so strange about it? Don't compare your useless pig brain with a magic genius like me." The white wings spread out behind him, and the golden light emitted by the field of light surrounded him, making George look like a holy god. Not only the little wizards who came around, but also the orators looked a little dazed. At this time, George is no longer the George in the first year, and his strength does not need to be disguised too much. Be arrogant when you should be arrogant, and there is no need to endure other people's temper. Not to mention a little Umbridge, even Dumbledore, he doesn't need to be cautious anymore. The key is that he said that these magics were created by him, and no one can refute them, because these magics are not magics of this world, and no one except him can do it. You. Hearing that George, a second-year wizard, dared to talk to her, the Deputy Minister of Magic, like this, Umbridge's hair was about to smoke. And Scrimgeour was in a good mood when he saw Umbridge being humiliated. In his heart, he looked down on Umbridge, a deputy minister who had no real ability, but only flattered and flattered everywhere to get promoted. "Since it was an accident, forget it, you have a good rest, the train will start soon, and it will arrive at Hogsmeade Station in less than an hour." "No, this kid killed a Dementor." Umbridge was not willing to give up, but was interrupted by Scrimgeour halfway through her words. "Deputy Minister, you should know that we did not find Sirius. The Minister will have to personally apologize to Dumbledore for stopping the Hogwarts Express without permission and letting the Dementors search the carriage. If you cause trouble to this student again, I'm afraid it will be even more difficult for the Minister. Without Dumbledore's permission, if the Dementors were sent to search the Hogwarts Express without authorization, there would be nothing to say if Sirius was found, but the fact is that nothing was found, which is embarrassing. Not only Dumbledore, but also the parents of these students will definitely make a fuss when they know about this. At this time, continuing to challenge Dumbledore's bottom line is definitely something the Minister does not want to see. Dumbledore's influence in the wizarding world is no joke. And since Sirius was not found on the Hogwarts Express, the next plan is to send Dementors to guard the entrances of the school to prevent Sirius from breaking in. If Dumbledore is angered and he disagrees, the next plan will be difficult to implement. After realizing the seriousness of the problem, Umbridge stopped talking and snorted coldly before apparating away. This place is not yet within the range of Hogwarts Castle, so apparition can still be used. "George, very good, study hard at Hogwarts, you will definitely become a great wizard like Dumbledore." Seeing Umbridge leave, Scrimgeour reached out and patted George on the shoulder. He didn't expect that the child who was adopted and abused by the Dark Wizard would have such a terrible magical talent, and he had grown to this point in just 1 year. "I will work hard." George put away his wings and light magic and nodded. Scrimgeour led the orators to retreat, and the train started again. George instantly became the focus of all the little wizards. In the next hour, little wizards kept passing by the room where he was, pretending to stop and look inside. Including little wizards from other carriages who heard the news. At the same time, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and other friends of his also came to his room to ask him about the situation. He also found out that Harry was not attacked by the Dementors. He estimated that the Dementors were attracted to Harry before they checked the room where Harry was hiding, and were finally scared away. Of course, this little variable was insignificant to him. The Hogwarts Express arrived at the destination very quickly. The first-year students continued to take the boat to the castle according to tradition, while they took the carriage pulled by the Thestrals to the castle. After arriving at the castle, they went directly to the hall and had the same sorting ceremony as last year, but before dinner, Dumbledore said a few things. The most important thing is that the Dementors will guard all the entrances and exits of the school until they catch Sirius Black, and advise the young wizards not to provoke them. The second is to introduce the new defense against the dark arts teacher Remus John Lupin and the new magical creatures teacher Rubeus Hagrid. After the party, George was about to return to the Slytherin common room, but he saw Professor McGonagall calling Hermione alone, and he was also called by Snape. "Dean, what's the matter?" George followed Snape to the stairs of the hall, and he had some guesses in his mind. Snape did not hide it from him and said directly, "Dumbledore is looking for you and wants to know more about what happened in the train." "Oh, what about Hermione?" George looked at Hermione, who was being led over by Professor McGonagall, with a puzzled look on his face. "If you want to ask about what happened on the train, you shouldn't bring Hermione with you. Ginny, Colin, and Luna are just fine, and Hermione and he are not in the same room." Snape glanced at Hermione over there and replied, "She didn't go to the principal's office. It was Professor McGonagall who came to see her alone. It's a good thing. Don't worry." Hearing what Snape said, George immediately realized that Professor McGonagall was about to give Hermione a time turner. The time turner, the most buggy magic prop in the world, can reset the time back to up to 5 hours ago. It is made according to the time magic hour reversal spell. In the original book, Hermione and Harry went back 5 hours through the time turner and saved the lives of Sirius Black and Buckbeak. Regarding time magic, he had read many related magic books before. But without exception, all magic books have a key point in stating that time magic is an extremely dangerous and unstable type of magic. A bad operation may kill your past and future selves, completely dissipating yourself in this world, and may even affect future generations and other wizards. Chapter 219, Showdown, No More Pretense. There was once a wizard named Eloise Mintab, who was a silent person in the Department of Mysteries. She used a time turner to go back to the past in an experiment, but died because the time exceeded a few hours. In the experiment of returning to the past, Eloise was trapped in 1402 for 5 days. When she finally returned to the present, her body age suddenly increased by 5 centuries for some reason, causing irreparable damage to her body, and eventually died of old age in St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. Her travels changed the life trajectories of all the people she met in the past, and at least 25 descendants disappeared from the present and became never born. In addition, there are some worrying signs that the time in the past has also been disturbed. The Tuesday after she returned to the present lasted for 2.5 days, and Thursday only lasted for 4 hours. And even if the time turner is used normally, the time itself will pass. Just like Hermione has been using the time turner to increase her study time so that she can study all subjects at the same time, which almost led to a collapse in the end. On the surface, you have studied for 8 hours, but in fact, you have studied for more than 10 hours using the time converter. Your body has experienced more than 10 hours and will be tired from studying for more than 10 hours. If you use it for a long time, others have 1 year, but you have 2 years, so your age has increased by 1 year more than others. So if you use it for learning, it does improve efficiency, but it only overdraws future time in advance. Because the time converter is too dangerous, the corresponding spell hour reversal spell for making the time converter has also been sealed by the Ministry of Magic and cannot be learned through normal channels. All the time converters that have been made are sealed in the Time Hall of the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic. Because the time converter is special, the Ministry of Magic has formulated hundreds of laws around the time converter. Unless it is applied for under special circumstances, it will generally not be approved for use. George is of course very excited about time magic and time converters, and time magic is also a magic he must learn. Because time magic is one of the most advanced magics in any world. Even if the time laws of different worlds are different, and even if you learn time magic, you cannot change the established facts, it is still very good to use it to improve learning efficiency. Anyway, he has lived forever, so he doesn't care about overdrawing the future time in advance. His future time is infinite. Of course, it is easy to apply for a time converter, but it is not so easy to learn and master the sealed hour reversal spell. It seems that it is time to show some real strength. After separating from Professor McGonagall and Hermione on the 8th floor, George followed Snape to the principal's office. In the office, Dumbledore was looking at a book about knitting skills published by Muggles. "Sit down first." Seeing Snape bring George in, he put down the book and motioned for the two to sit down first. "Principal, the Ministry of Magic secretly let the Dementors search the train, and George was wrong to kill him by mistake." Snape sat down and spoke first. Students of his own college should protect themselves, especially George is his last disciple. Regardless of whether Dumbledore wants to blame George or not, it is always right to make a few excuses first. It seems that entering Slytherin is a wise choice. George sighed in his heart when he saw Snape's complete support for him as soon as he opened his mouth. Of the 4 deans of the college, Snape may not be the most ethical teacher, the most fair and just, but he is definitely the most protective of his children. This is also one of the reasons why he has not exposed that Scabbers is Pettigrew. Sirius is innocent and righteous, but Sirius has nothing to do with him. On the contrary, it is a fact that Sirius and Harry's father bullied Snape when they were in school. Snape must have been wrong, and he probably said a lot of things he shouldn't have said. But who made Snape his dean, and always supported him and took good care of him, so he naturally favored Snape. So, he did not plan to clear Sirius's grievances early, so he let him suffer a little more, just to make Snape happy. Let it go to the end, as long as he didn't let Pettigrew go and let Pettigrew help Voldemort resurrect. Severus, I don't mean to blame George. He did a good job in killing the Dementors to protect his classmates. I just want to see the magic he used to kill the Dementors. Dumbledore explained with a smile. When he heard from Fudge that George killed a Dementor with magic, he was quite surprised. Because even he couldn't kill a dark creature like Dementors directly. Or in other words, at this stage in the wizarding world, there is no way to kill Dementors directly, not even the killing curse. The Dementors and the Ministry of Magic are in a cooperative relationship. The Dementors help the Ministry of Magic guard Azkaban, and the Ministry of Magic allows the Dementors to suck the happiness of the prisoners in Azkaban openly. As for why the Dementors dare not suck everywhere at will? Because although wizards can't kill Dementors, they can use the Patronus charm to drive them to a certain place and imprison them. For example, a box made with the Traceless extension charm, plus some sealing spells. In this way, the Dementors can only stay in the box until they gradually dissipate due to a long period of lack of food. I heard that this is a new magic you created yourself. At this time, Snape also turned his head to look at George. He was also curious. Among all the students in Hogwarts, George was definitely a genius among geniuses. At the end of the 1st grade, he already had a magical knowledge reserve close to that of a 7th grade wizard. He was also very good at magic duels and created a special flying magic. Even when he was in the 5th grade, he was not able to create his own new magic until he was in the 5th grade. But to be honest, with his understanding of George's magic level, he was still very surprised that George could create new magic. Because he felt that George's current level was not enough to support the creation of new magic. However, magic creation is inherently accidental, and it is often due to luck, not entirely relying on strength. Actually, not entirely. George looked at Snape and Dumbledore, and after a few seconds of pause, he slowly replied. He was ready to show his cards and stop pretending. Originally, he was going to say that he created a new magic that could kill Dementors based on the Patronus charm. Anyway, he had indeed learned the Patronus charm from Amy and could show it immediately. But after thinking about it carefully on the train, he felt that there were too many loopholes in saying it this way. Given Dumbledore and Snape's intelligence and understanding of magic, they probably wouldn't believe it. Chapter 220. Magic taught by the gods. First of all, with his level of magical knowledge in this world, it seemed a bit exaggerated to create a spell that could kill Dementors that had never appeared before. Flying magic is still justifiable. After all, Voldemort also invented it and has a similar record. But there has never been any magic that can kill Dementors. The key point is that this is the first time he has seen a Dementor, so he has not studied magic specifically. It really doesn't make sense. If I had to say it, it could only be said to be an accident. I accidentally invented a magic that could kill the Dementors. Secondly, the magic of his fairy tale is not the same as the magic of this world. Many principles are different and the forms of presentation are also different. Fairy tale's magic basically has a magic circle, but the magic in this world doesn't have that special effect. At his current level, he is still unable to convert the magic of fairy tale into the magic of this world, and use the magic principles of this world to interpret the magic of the fairy tale world. An ordinary wizard would be able to fool around with it, but when faced with the likes of Snape and Dumbledore, how could they believe it if you said it was a magic inspired by the Guardians? So if he insists on saying this, then both of them should be able to tell that he is lying. If it were before, he felt that even if the other party thought he was lying, he would never tell the truth, otherwise his life and death would be in the hands of the other party. As long as he refuses to admit it, I believe Snape will protect him and Dumbledore will not be too embarrassed. But now, he feels that it is not necessary, because he is confident in his own strength. Even if Dumbledore turns against him, he will not be without the strength to fight. Simply show some strength. If Dumbledore feels that he is the main force in fighting Voldemort in the future, or the savior to end Voldemort, and is willing to train him with all his strength, that would be great. And he doesn't have to worry all day long about discovering any abnormalities or using magic from other worlds. Of course, he is not stupid and will not expose all his secrets and say that he learned the magic from other worlds. Not exactly, what do you mean? Snape frowned. Could it be that George accidentally learned some lost magic from some ancient magic book and then claimed that he created it himself? If that's the case, it's okay. It's normal for children to be more vain. That's how Slytherin is. Because this magic that can kill Dementors and the previous flying magic were actually taught to me in my sleep by an old man who claimed to be a god. And not only these two magics, he also taught me a lot of magic and gave me special powers. What? God? Snape and Dumbledore's eyes widened when they heard this. They never expected that George would give such an incredible answer. Isn't it a joke that gods teach magic in dreams? From ancient times to the present, although there have been legends about gods, such as the most famous story of the Three Deathly Hallows, no one has ever been able to truly prove the existence of gods. Even a wizard as powerful as Dumbledore was never sure whether gods really existed. When his sister died, he frantically searched for a way to resurrect her and searched for information about gods, but found nothing. George, you are actually very good. You are the best student I have ever seen. Even if you are not able to create your own magic, it is normal. Many adult wizards are unable to create magic. So just treat it with a normal mind and don't worry too much. Snape now felt that George must be lying, and it was a very bad lie, which made him feel a little disappointed in George. As a Slytherin, lying is nothing, but you have to tell a lie that can deceive everyone. Even if you insist on saying it is your own magic, that is fine. As long as there is no evidence, then it is your own magic. You said that gods taught you magic in dreams. This is simply an insult to his and Dumbledore's intelligence. It's okay to deceive a first and second year wizard, but it is simply too clumsy to deceive him and Dumbledore. Dumbledore didn't speak, but judging from his expression, it was obvious that he didn't believe George's words. When George saw this, he didn't talk nonsense and started to show it directly. 20 million volts? He didn't take out his wand, and a burst of electric light instantly erupted from his body. He waved his hand, and all the metal in the room was controlled by him, flying up and surrounding him. This is the physical ability that my grandfather gave me. I don't need to chant spells or cast spells. I can achieve it just by thinking about it. There are many more, but the room here is too small to display them conveniently. Principal, this doesn't seem like magic. Snape looked at George, who was surrounded by lightning and various metal objects, and said to Dumbledore with a horrified look on his face. Whether it was an effect caused by magic, he, a top wizard, could still tell. Moreover, with George's level of magic, it was impossible to release magic silently and without a wand, and he had never seen this form of magic. It's indeed not magic. It seems that George may not be lying. Dumbledore stared and nodded. He could feel that the lightning around George was quite powerful. But we still need to verify it further, let's go to the Forbidden Forest. There are also many wizards who are born with special abilities. Just like some people are born with legilimency, some are born with the ability to predict the future, and some are born with the ability to release fire magic. Then George may also be born with the ability to release electricity, which is not unreasonable. Snape nodded, cast a flying spell and turned into a black smoke. Dumbledore cast a flying spell and turned into white light. George spread his wings, and the three flew directly out of the office window. Within the scope of Hogwarts Castle, apparition cannot be used. Even Dumbledore needs the power of the Phoenix to perform it. So it is most convenient to fly directly to the Forbidden Forest, and you can fly back after the end, so you don't have to delay going back to sleep. But what George didn't expect was that Dumbledore also knew flying magic. He thought only Snape knew it. After all, Snape also learned flying magic from Voldemort. But if you think about it carefully, it's normal. With Dumbledore's level, if he specializes in flying magic, it shouldn't be very difficult. It's just that he doesn't use it very often. Even within the scope of Hogwarts, he can use the Phoenix apparition to move anywhere else. It's much more convenient than flying. Soon, the three of them landed on a clearing far away from the Forbidden Forest. "Dean, Headmaster, I'll start then." George straightened his wizard robe and said to Snape and Dumbledore. The two looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Chapter 221. The disaster that destroyed the entire world. This is the light magic that disperses the darkness, and it is also the magic that I used to kill the Dementors. George didn't use his magic wand, and a huge white magic circle instantly appeared in front of him. A ray of light. Field of light. Explosion of light. Rain of light. After casting holy light magic all over, George continued to cast the second magic. This is giant magic. It can make your body grow in size. The magic circle lit up again on his body, his arms instantly swelled, and with one punch, a large tree nearby exploded with several people on the spot. This is the fist bone of a giant. Then his body expanded to a height of more than 10 meters. This is gigantism. In this state, my power is stronger than that of the giants. When you clap your hands, the wind howls. A punch hit the ground, and Snape and Dumbledore felt the ground tremble. If they hadn't known that George was a pure human being, they would have really thought that George was a giant, or a tall guy among the giants. Shrinking to his normal size, he reached out and drew in the air. It's word magic. This is a magical barrier. This is transformation magic. This is the magic of dressing up. This is mimic transformation magic. This is mirror world magic. After some hesitation, George continued. What I just showed you is the various magics that Grandpa taught me. What I am showing you now is the special power that Grandpa gave me. The whole body was once again enveloped in lightning. This move is called the electromagnetic gun. He reached out and took out a silver sickle and bounced it up. 200 million volts of electric light enveloped the silver sickle. After George took aim, it shot forward at supersonic speeds. After a while, a broad road opened in front of George. When Snape and Dumbledore saw this, their eyes were full of horror. Just this one blow can kill more than 90% of the wizards in the world instantly. There are only a handful of wizards in the entire wizarding world who are silent and wandless and can cast magic instantly. Basically, most wizards have to wave magic and chant spells to cast magic, and they need at least 1 second to prepare. So facing George's supersonic electromagnetic gun, they had no time to use magic defense and counterattack. The key is that the power of George's electromagnetic gun is so terrifying. If it is hit, it will probably be finished on the spot. Next is the Thunder Titan and the enlarged version of the railgun. George's body exploded with magnetic force, and a thunder giant more than 30 meters tall gradually took shape. When he was about to show an enlarged version of the railgun, Dumbledore quickly used the amplifying spell and shouted. No need to show it anymore, we believe you, quickly return to your original appearance. The commotion just now in the middle of the night must have alarmed many magical animals and primitive residents in the Forbidden Forest. If George were to let George use the enlarged version of the super electromagnetic gun, it would be troublesome. There were also Aurors and Dementors surrounding every exit of the school. So he called George to stop in time. After George returned to his original state, he immediately used the repair spell to repair the nearby damaged trees, and flew back to the office with Snape and George. Actually, I still have some to show for it. Returning to the office, George said with his eyes wide open. Dumbledore and Snape raised their hands to stop them at the same time. No, no, we believe you. To be honest, both of them are still a little confused now. There are so many different kinds of magic, so many kinds of magic that are completely different from what they know, all of which do not require a wand, and they are all so powerful. This indeed cannot be the ancient magic that George learned in some magic books. It's not like they haven't studied ancient magic, but the speed of its execution is slow and its power is surprisingly powerful. However, the principles of magic and other aspects are not much different from modern magic. Modern magic only optimizes ancient magic to a certain extent, and develops new magic based on it. But the magic that George cast was a completely different system of magic. With their level of magic, they can't even understand the principles, let alone George's own creation and learning from magic books. And his thunder giant and railgun were simply beyond their knowledge. So apart from the magic imparted by the gods that George said, they really couldn't think of any other reason to explain all this. After calming down for a while, Dumbledore asked George. Did the gods tell you who they are? Did they tell you why they wanted to teach you magic? He now believed 70% to 80% of George's words, but he still had some doubts in his heart. George had already been prepared for Dumbledore's question. The old man didn't tell me who he was. He only said he was a god. He taught me magic because in 20 years a huge disaster will come to the world, a disaster that can wipe out all human beings. He said that I was the one he chose, an existence born in response to the disaster that wiped out the entire human race. What? Snape and Dumbledore's pupils shrank at the same time. What kind of disaster is it? All humans are extinct. Even if Voldemort is resurrected and rules the world, it is impossible for all humans to become extinct. What kind of terrible disaster will cause all human beings to become extinct 20 years from now? At this moment, Snape and Dumbledore's focus is no longer on the gods, but on the disaster. George cleared his throat and began his great trick. In fact, I am not very clear, nor can I understand it very well. I will just roughly repeat what the old man said. He told me that outside the planet we live on, there is a wider universe with more advanced civilizations than ours. Like the Xandar civilization, the Kree Empire, the Skrull Empire, and... After 3 hours, until 2 in the morning, George finally finished his story. He could only say that fortunately there was nothing related to Marvel in this world, so he could use Marvel's story to trick Snape and Dumbledore. So, you are saying that in 20 years, an alien named Thanos will bring his cosmic army to invade the Earth and exterminate mankind. The gods teach you magic so that you can defeat them and protect the Earth and mankind. Snape's expression was dull. The amount of information George said was too much, causing him to be unable to receive and understand it for a while. As a Slytherin wizard, he knew very little about Muggles, and naturally didn't have much idea about the universe and aliens. Most of his knowledge of the universe was about astronomical magic, using stars for divination, etc. But what George said was very real. Those alien empires, those space battleships, and their abilities and civilizations didn't sound fake at all. Chapter 222. The real savior is George. Dumbledore felt the same way, but he was much better than Snape. He had a deep understanding of many things about Muggles. After all, the World War II predicted by Grindelwald did happen, and Muggles also invented terrifying nuclear weapons. Naturally, he would spend time studying some things about Muggles. The main reason was that he didn't have to go to class, so he was free most of the time and had a lot of time. So he could roughly understand what George said. I didn't expect that the universe and alien civilizations that those Muggles said were actually true. It's a pity that their technology is too backward compared to the civilization in the universe, and they can't help much. Dumbledore sighed, then looked at George and said, George, don't tell anyone about this matter first, so as not to cause panic. It's late now, you should go back and rest first. Okay, then I'll go back, Principal. George nodded obediently, turned around and left the principal's office. It shouldn't be a big problem. After leaving the principal's office, George recalled the expressions of Snape and Dumbledore, and thought secretly in his heart. He made up this disaster not for fun, but to make Snape and Dumbledore go all out to help him in the future. If they believed what he said and thought he was the true savior chosen by the gods, even if they didn't obey him, they would at least not refuse his request to learn magic. For example, they would help him apply for a time converter, guide him on the Fidelius charm and Vulcan way. Even if they were half believing and half doubting, it wouldn't be a bad thing. The worst thing would be to keep it the same. Anyway, there would be no loss. They would never regard him as an enemy. His performance in the Forbidden Forest just now was not only a display of magic, but also a display of strength. Let Dumbledore understand that even if he didn't believe it, he would never push the powerful George to the opposite side, to Voldemort's side. But he estimated that the problem should not be big. Dumbledore was a person who believed in fate, otherwise he would not have been cultivating Harry, the savior in the prophecy. As for what to do if there is no alien invasion in 20 years? We'll talk about it 20 years later. By then, he may not need to consider this issue. If he really needs it, he may even direct and act in a play about aliens invading the Earth to entertain everyone. Severus, what do you think? After George left, Dumbledore turned his head and looked at Snape. Snape wanted to answer that he couldn't see anything, because he was still confused. Many facts were really incomprehensible. I don't think George should have to lie. You saw the magic he just showed in the Forbidden Forest. It was very powerful. That's not the magic that should exist in this world. Apart from the gods, I can't think of anyone who can teach him such powerful magic. And so many details about the disaster, I don't think he can make up in a short time at his age and cognition. George was his favorite student, and he was more inclined to believe that everything George said was true. Yes, just now in the Forbidden Forest, I felt that Voldemort's problem was no longer a problem. Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh. Based on George's performance just now, he felt that Voldemort in his prime might not be his opponent. He had always been worried that Voldemort would be resurrected, and it didn't seem to be a big deal. Voldemort was not his opponent, but Voldemort could not be killed with special black magic, and he was old. He was worried that if he died and Voldemort was resurrected, who could stop Voldemort? So he had been paying attention to Harry, the son of prophecy, and wanted to train him well and completely end the Dark Devil in the future. But now it seems that compared to the Purple Devil that George said might destroy the entire Earth, the Dark Devil is simply not worth mentioning, and the Dark Devil's conspiracy seems too childish. If what George said is true, then maybe he has to adjust his plan. But is what George said true? He can't be sure, nor can he deny it. He can only treat it as true first. After all, it involves the safety of the entire human race. What are your plans? Snape saw Dumbledore fell into deep thought and asked. Dumbledore stroked his beard, picked up the toffee on the table, put one in his mouth, and said after eating it. Since the gods have arranged it, let's do everything as usual and believe that he can solve the great disaster in 20 years. If he has any needs, try to satisfy him as much as possible. Tell him that I am usually free in the office. If he has any questions about magic, he can come to me at any time. Although I am definitely not as good as the gods who taught him, the magic taught by the gods is very different from our magic. It is always helpful to learn more. In fact, even if what George said was true, he could not do anything. He could not rectify the entire wizarding world and then unite with Muggles to deal with the crisis in 20 years. If he could, he would have done it long ago. Although he is recognized as the most powerful wizard, there are many things he cannot do and he is powerless to change. He is just a little stronger than ordinary wizards. What he could do was to train George as much as possible and believe in the choice of the gods. It was also a good opportunity to have more contact with him later to further confirm whether what George said was true. The next morning, George was saluted by the young wizards as soon as he arrived at the auditorium. He was accustomed to this. He had been in the limelight a lot last year, and this situation often occurred. It was just a little more exaggerated this year. From the lower grades to the upper grades, almost all the young wizards looked at him with awe. The reason was naturally because he killed a Dementor on the train yesterday. The existence of Dementors was equivalent to the horse monkey that parents often mentioned in their ears when they were young. It was a very terrifying existence. Horse monkey you will not be afraid of when you grow up, because you know it is a non-existent creature, but when you grow up, you will find that Dementors not only exist, but your parents are also afraid of him. You should know that not all wizards can use advanced spells such as the Patronus Charm. In the Middle Ages, anyone who could cast the Patronus Charm would be considered a very talented person by wizards, and thus obtain a high status. Therefore, most wizards could only become food after encountering Dementors, without any ability to resist. George, Come to my office after breakfast." He had just sat down and hadn't opened his mouth when he heard Snape's voice. Chapter 223, Fusion of Plasma Cannon and Electromagnetic Cannon. In Dean Slater's office, Snape conveyed Dumbledore's words to George. "Both the principal and I believe what you said, and we will do our best to help you learn magic and improve your strength to better deal with the crisis 20 years from now." "That's great. I didn't dare to say it before because I was afraid that you wouldn't believe me. After all, these things are simply ridiculous. Sometimes I can't believe it myself." George's eyes lit up when he heard this, and then he became unceremonious and began to hint to Snape. "Everything else is fine. It's just that I have to practice the magic my grandpa taught me every day and learn the magic in school. I always feel like there's not enough time." "Not enough time? That's okay, I'll help you apply for a time converter that should solve your problem." Snape waved his hand and replied without hesitation. With George's talent, under normal circumstances, he would also apply for a time turner for George when he is in 3rd grade next year. It's just a year ahead of schedule. With the time turner, George can free up more time to improve his strength during normal classes. Originally, there were only 20 years to improve the strength. Now if the time turner is used to the extreme, it is equivalent to 40 years to improve the strength. I believe Dumbledore will agree. Time turner. George pretended not to understand, and Snape quickly provided an explanation. Through Snape's explanation, George finally had a more detailed understanding of the time turner. The time turner can reverse up to 5 hours at a time, and it cannot be reversed again immediately after the reversal. It must wait until time returns to normal. That is to say, for example, if I use the time converter to go back from 5 o'clock in the morning to 0 in the morning, I cannot immediately use the time converter to go back 5 hours and go back to 7 o'clock last night. Secondly, when I use the time converter to reverse the time to 0 in the morning, and then from 0 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, I cannot use the time converter and have to wait until the time passes 5 o'clock. For example, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I can reverse it for 1 hour at most. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I can reverse it for 2 hours. It takes me until 10 o'clock in the morning to reverse it 5 hours at a time and return to 5 o'clock in the morning. Because according to the laws of time in this world, only 2 selves can appear at the same time, not 3. So even if you use it to the extreme, you can actually get twice as much time at most. However, these time laws are not fixed laws in this world, but are the safest, most stable and problem-free laws formulated by the Ministry of Magic based on their research on time converters. Of course, you cannot follow this, for example, I reverse for 12 hours, or I reverse continuously, resulting in 7 or 8 me at the same time. If you are lucky, you may be safe and sound; if you are unlucky, you may disappear directly, or your relatives and friends, ancestors, and future generations will be affected, just like the wizard named Heloise Mintab. George is already immortal and has an infinite lifespan, so he is not afraid of suddenly aging for 5 centuries, but he also does not want time disruption to lead to world chaos or world collapse. Therefore, before thoroughly studying time magic, he must first follow the correct method of using the time converter. Being able to have twice as much time is already very good for him. Outside of class, he can have more time to do more things without being limited to class. As for the issue of sleep, after immortality, he actually no longer needs to sleep as long as normal people. He can maintain a normal state by supplementing it for an hour or 2 a day. But you can't stay up all the time. You won't die if you don't sleep all the time. It will make your mental state very poor and affect your normal study. It was a normal day of class, and in the evening, Snape found George again, handed the time turner to him, and gave him related instructions for its use for the second time. He was deeply afraid that George would have problems with his life due to improper use of the time turner. From that day on, George started a crazy learning mode. His time turner rotates nearly 5 times almost every day, operating at its limit. In addition to normal class time and time in the library, he spent most of his time in the principal's office, learning some magic that was not available in the classroom. Since Dumbledore was so free every day, how could he miss such a good opportunity? In terms of magic level, no one in this world can compare to Dumbledore. And his level of magic in this world is also improving at a rapid speed. The various spells he has learned have become more proficient, and the various spells he has not yet learned are also gradually mastered. Even because Dumbledore had studied ancient magic, he also learned some new ancient magic from Dumbledore, such as the mountain moving spell, the rainstorm spell, the tornado spell, etc. In the end, even Dumbledore was a little overwhelmed by George's excessive enthusiasm for learning. Although he didn't have to go to class, it wasn't like he had nothing to do. Coupled with his age, sometimes his energy couldn't keep up. He was chased by George for advice for a long time, and he was in a trance. Fortunately, George was not an unreasonable person. After Dumbledore communicated with him, he made some adjustments and allocated some time to Snape, McGonagall and other professors. Although these professors have to attend classes, they still have free time. Just as Harry Potter's clone started the crazy learning mode, the panda clone in the world of magic apprentices also made new gains. Before, because he wanted to break through to level 500 and achieve immortality as soon as possible, the panda clone spent most of his time meditating to improve the magician level. Recently, he finally broke through to level 500, so he reduced the time of meditation and began to increase the time of learning magic with Balthazar. And today, he finally learned the strongest magic of Merlin, plasma cannon magic. The magicians in this world have a common weakness, that is, they are very afraid of electric shock, because the current entering the body will make their magic power out of control, and thus lose the ability to resist. So magicians generally like to wear insulated leather shoes and leather clothes. George does not have this worry. His magic power is based on the wizard bloodline. Meditation is more like improving the level of magic power on the basis of wizard bloodline. His ability to control magic power is far superior to the native magicians in this world. Besides, he himself is now an electric shock user, who can easily release a voltage of 200 million volts. How can he be afraid of being electrocuted? David was able to defeat Morgana in the end by using scientific instruments to create a large amount of electric shocks, making Morgana's magic unable to function normally, and then he used a plasma electromagnetic cannon like a machine gun. Normally, even Balthazar can only hit one at a time, although his hits are much larger and more powerful than David's. George had just learned this magic, and could only condense one at a time, and the size was about the same as David's, just the size of an egg. However, he is now a 4th level ability user, able to use 200 million volts of electricity. So he was thinking, if he could combine the super electromagnetic cannon with this plasma cannon magic, could he create a more powerful attack method? Chapter 224. The power of plasma electromagnetic cannon. If the two can be combined, the name can be called plasma electromagnetic cannon, or electromagnetic isobaric cannon. To simplify it, it can be called isoelectric cannon and electric isobaric cannon. Let's give it a try. He directly operated to an uninhabited open space outside New York, set up the Muggle shielding spell and the ritual barrier in advance, and began to try. Plasma cannon. He closed his hands, then slowly opened them, and an egg-sized plasma ball gradually appeared in his palms. Then, according to the normal steps, he only needed to aim the plasma ball at the target and shoot it out, and the magic would be completed. But he didn't. While he was trying to maintain the plasma ball, his body was instantly covered by electric current, and then he controlled the current to slowly inject electricity from his hands into the plasma ball. As he injected electricity, the size of the plasma ball became larger and larger, expanding from the size of an egg to the size of an apple, and then from the size of an apple to the size of a pear. Unfortunately, before he could continue to inject electricity, the entire plasma ball exploded because of a poor control. A large pit more than 10 meters deep was blown up on the ground on the spot. Fortunately, he was strong and could control the electric current, so he was not injured. Keep going. After the first attempt failed, he did not give up, but continued to try again. It is not so easy to combine superpowers and magic to create new moves. This is different from the previous combination of ancient magic and thunder giants. That is called a combination. In fact, it is just releasing a large amount of lightning through ancient magic, and then using thunder giants to absorb the power of lightning to strengthen themselves. Even if it is not ancient magic, using technological equipment to release a large amount of lightning for thunder giants to absorb can also achieve a similar effect, without any technical content. After trying again and again and failing again and again, George asked the main body and the clones in other worlds to temporarily put down the affairs in hand and put their main energy on the development of the electric cannon. 5 days later, because 5 bodies were working at the same time, plus the Harry Potter world also had a time converter, it was equivalent to 6 bodies working at the same time, a total of about 30 days. He finally created the new move of the electric cannon, which combines superpowers and magic. Plasma electromagnetic cannon. Standing on the open ground, he pulled out an egg-sized plasma cannon with both hands, injected electricity into it fiercely, until it was as big as 2 basketballs, and then pushed it forward fiercely. Suddenly, the electromagnetic cannon with 2 basketballs shot out a plasma beam, which hit a hill over 300 meters high on the opposite side. The middle of the hill was directly vaporized and turned into a big hole. But the power of the plasma electromagnetic cannon is more than that, because the plasma beam did not disappear, but continued to maintain this state. George controlled the plasma beam in his hand to swing left and right, and the hill was actually cut in half by the plasma beam from the middle. The effect of the magic of the plasma electromagnetic cannon is very similar to the ultimate move of the little girl who can set fire in a mobile game he played in his previous life. It's just that the little girl set a fire column, and he set a plasma column. About 10 seconds later, the plasma column disappeared, and George was slightly relieved. It is not easy to maintain the plasma column all the time. After so many days of research and practice, he can only maintain it for 10 seconds at most. However, he is still very satisfied with the power. When his superpower level reaches level 5 in the later stage, the power will be even greater. It's a pity that it can't be used in the state of Thunder Giant. Looking at the destroyed hill in the distance, George sighed with some regret. If he can use this plasma electromagnetic cannon with the blessing of ancient magic and Thunder Giant, then it is estimated that ordinary Holy 10 wizards can kill it instantly. The principle of Thunder Giant is to use electromagnetic force to attract iron sand and rock soil underground, and finally release an enlarged version of electromagnetic cannon. The plasma electromagnetic cannon integrates all the electricity into the plasma cannon, so it is naturally impossible to condense the Thunder Giant, nor can it absorb the lightning of ancient magic. However, this problem is not unsolvable. If his superpower can be upgraded from level 4 to level 5, then half of the electricity can be used to condense the Thunder Giant, and the other half of the electricity can be used to fuse the plasma cannon, and both can be carried out at the same time. Finally, he inhaled the lightning of ancient magic to increase the overall power. In this way, he could release the ultimate plasma electromagnetic cannon that was powerful enough to destroy a city. No hurry, take your time. George operated again and returned to David's laboratory under the subway. The next step is to learn the soul separation spell and the soul sealing spell. The soul separation spell is a spell that can separate a person's soul from the body. Balthazar used this spell when he extracted Morgana's soul from Veronica's body. If George wants to get the resurrection spell from Morgana's mouth, he must release Morgana alone, otherwise it will be difficult to torture the resurrection spell with Balthazar and David. If he releases Morgana alone, he must consider 2 aspects. The first aspect is fighting, and he must have the strength to defeat Morgana alone. This is not a big problem. The power of his plasma electromagnetic cannon just now is definitely greater than David's machine gun plasma cannon, and one shot can basically end Morgana. Mainly the second aspect. He needs to separate Morgana's soul from Veronica's body first. He can't kill Veronica as well. So he must learn the most difficult soul magic of the Merlin school. Since he has to learn the soul separation spell, he can also learn the soul sealing spell by the way. In his opinion, this is a very useful magic. If he encounters an unkillable existence in the future, he can seal it directly. However, he has never been exposed to soul magic before, and it may take a long time to learn it. But it doesn't matter, anyway, he doesn't need to use these magics now, so he can take his time. Maybe he can also find knowledge related to soul magic from the clones in other worlds, so as to help him master these soul magics more quickly. For example, the black magic of Voldemort splitting souls to make Horcruxes. Of course, he will not be stupid enough to learn Voldemort's splitting souls to make Horcruxes and become a madman, but the knowledge about souls can be learned and referenced. In fact, if you think about it carefully, his splitting of souls in the world of the universe to create clones is really similar to Voldemort splitting his soul to create Horcruxes. Each of his clones in the world of the universe is equivalent to a Horcrux. As long as one of them is alive, he cannot die. Chapter 225. Superpower Academy Upgrade. Marvel World, Superpower Academy. Finally, the plasma electromagnetic cannon is completed. After sleeping only 1 hour a day for 5 consecutive days, George breathed a sigh of relief after the Panda clone experimented with the effect of the plasma electromagnetic cannon. Next, it's time to upgrade the school. During this period, he has been considering upgrading the school, whether in terms of technology or magic. In terms of magic, his magic power has improved rapidly during this period, and he has learned a lot of new magic. In addition, with the new wand made by the World Tree, the effect of casting magic has been greatly improved. As for technology, with Banner and Betty, 2 scientific and technological talents, the old equipment in the school can finally be updated. It's not that the equipment left by the beast is not good. In fact, the technological level of many equipment in the school is epoch-making in the contemporary and even modern times. Just like the X-Fighter, and the battle simulation room that even Tony said was super powerful. However, the times are progressing after all, and some things can actually be replaced with better ones to achieve better results. Just like Howard Stark had already researched new elements, but was unable to make them due to the overall technological level at the time. In Tony's era, it can be done easily. You have the technology to make computers, but if you were placed in the ancient times when bronzeware was used, you would not be able to make a computer. So Banner and Betty's scientific research and creation capabilities may not be as good as the beast, but it is no problem to upgrade the overall equipment of the school. Leaving the room and coming outside the school, it is now morning and the students are still in class as usual. During this period, Professor X discovered several children with special abilities and recruited them into the school with George's consent. The number of students in the school is slowly increasing. Arriving at the school gate, George waved his hand to remove the Muggle shielding spell and the spell barrier. Following Dumbledore to learn magic, he already has a better choice. Fidelius. George waved his wand and added the Fidelius charm to the entire school. The Fidelius charm is a spell that is much more effective than the Muggle shielding spell. The Muggle shielding charm is limited to shielding Muggles, that is, ordinary people. It is basically a potential psychological suggestion that makes ordinary people ignore the house with the Muggle shielding charm when they approach. In the words of S.H.I.E.L.D., it is a strange magnetic field that interferes with the brain. For people with magic or strong psychic abilities, it basically has no effect, and it is not difficult to crack it with scientific means. But the Fidelius charm is different. This extremely complex and advanced spell, in George's view, has already established a kind of magic rule. This rule stipulates that except for the secret keeper, no one else can find the building protected by the Fidelius charm by any means, whether you use magic detection or any advanced technology. There are countless rules in the world, and the Fidelius charm is just a small change of one of them. Unmappable. After casting the Fidelius charm, George began to cast the second spell, the Unmappable charm. This is also a very advanced spell involving rules. Its function is to make the target disappear on all maps in the world. Magic schools like Hogwarts basically use this spell to prevent Muggles from finding the school and protect the students. After casting the 2 advanced spells, George spread his wings and flew into the air, and began to rearrange the spell barrier. This time, the spell barrier he arranged was purely for defense. The first 2 spells prevented the enemy from finding the school, but if all nearby locations were attacked indiscriminately, the school would still be covered. After arranging the spell, he flew directly to the open space in front of the school castle, where hundreds of huge metal statues were placed in rows, all of which were made by Tony with the best alloy. Among them were dragons, 3-headed hellhounds, hydras, 9-tailed foxes, Bize, Quay, phoenixes, unicorns, Dao and other various mythological creatures from the east and the west. Mimicry. Holding the magic wand, George came to these metal statues one by one, and cast the mimicry magic to make them all alive. With George's mastery of the magic of mimicry and deformation, it is not possible to mimic such a large piece of metal and give it magical power. But he has a new wand that can amplify more than 20 times, so he can do it easily. Unfortunately, the amplification effect of the wand in the Harry Potter world also has its limits, and it cannot be infinitely amplified. At most, it can only achieve an effect of more than 20 times. Otherwise, it stands to reason that the amplification effect of the wand made of the World Tree and the heart nerve of the Frost Giant King should be much stronger than that of the fairy tale, but in fact the gap is not big. The main reason is that the magic level in the Harry Potter world is so high, and the wand technology can only reach that level. Even if the materials are good, they can't make up for the technical gap. No matter how good the materials are, the electric fan is not as good as the cooling effect of the air conditioner. Moreover, as his magic power increases in the later period, the amplification effect of the wand will also decrease. It is impossible that he has already surpassed the father level, and a magic can destroy the planet, and the wand can still give more than 20 times the magic amplification, which is far beyond the limit of the wand. Therefore, if there is no new technology to improve the magic wand in the future, the magic wand will be obsolete sooner or later. The good thing is that he will no longer be restricted by the magic wand. Even if the newly opened clone does not have a wand, it can still exert the strongest strength. The strength of all world clones will be the same. Now because of the wand, his Marvel main body is the strongest, the fairy tale world clone is second, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Apprentice world are about the same, and the new Misaka world is the weakest because there is no wand. George, your magic is good, more interesting than the magic of our god realm. Just as George had just finished performing the mimicry and deformation magic, before he had time to let the metal statues disperse and hide around the school, he heard a familiar voice behind him. It was Thor, the hammer god, holding a book war elegy in his hand. It has been a while since he came to school with George. Every day, he either listens to Professor X's ideological and political class, listens to Steve telling his own story, or listens to everyone's opinions to read some world classics and watch some war-themed movies. Thor, how are you feeling recently? Have you tried to pick up the hammer? George waved his hand to control the metal statues to disperse, and asked Thor with a smile. Thor nodded immediately. I have gained a lot, and I can understand why the Father God is unwilling to start a war again. I tried it this morning, and the hammer has begun to shake. If nothing unexpected happens, I should be able to pick up Mjolnir in the next few days and recover all my strength.